For the stream to fire up all across the fruited plains of the internet, I am skidding in here on Friday, starting the month off bigly on October 1st. Can you believe the year is almost over? Ridiculous. Time is flying by. Let's make sure that we're alive and well across all the various platforms. Let's take a look over on YouTube. Looks like we're alive and well. Let's check over on Facebook. We're good. Twitch is still booting up. You know, Facebook used to be the one that took some time, but now it's Twitch. Twitch takes a little bit of time, but that's all right because it's going to be up any minute now, and there it is. So we can go ahead and get started. Hello, my friends, and welcome back to yet another episode of Watching the Watchers Live. My name is Robert Gruler. I am a criminal defense attorney here at the R&R Law Group in the always beautiful and sunny Scottsdale, Arizona, where my team and I, over the course of many years, have represented thousands of good people facing criminal charges. And throughout our time in practice, we have seen a lot of problems with our justice system. I'm talking about misconduct involving the police. We have prosecutors behaving poorly. We've got judges not particularly interested in a little thing called justice, and it all starts with the politicians, the people at the top, the ones who write the rules and pass the laws that they expect you and me to follow, but sometimes have a little bit of difficulty doing so themselves. That's why we started this show called Watching the Watchers, so that together with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. We're grateful that you are here and with us today because we've got some news to get into. It's Friday. The week is over, but we're jumping into a new month. It's October 1st, and we've got one quarter left, my goodness, until 2021. It's been a hell of a ride is over. But before we finish the week out, we've got to check in and see what California is doing, because Governor Gavin Newsom, who just won recall election, he's going to be around there in California for some time, came out and is now communicating that as soon as the FDA approves that vaccine, boom, going right into the arms of the kids. And so Gavin Newsom really wants to jab your children, which is gross thing to say, but that's happening right now. And so we're going to go through this. We have some comparing and contrasting that we need to do. I posted this over on Twitter. If you don't follow me over there, I just posted a chart. I have also posted that in Locals. In fact, Locals helped me sort of synthesize this thing, but we're going to go through this because Gavin Newsom and many other people are sort of saying, well, if you want to go to school, you get vaccinated for all of these other things. What's the difference between the polio or the measles or the mumps vaccines and the COVID vaccine? And so we have a little bit of a compare and contrast that we can do without violating any of YouTube's vaccine misinformation policies. I think we're within the guidelines. So we're going to go through that and take a look at it. We've also got reaction to this from a California Assemblyman named Kevin Kiley. He's sort of identifying some of Newsom's hypocrisy. We're going to see what is happening in other parts of the country because we've got a former governor, Terry McAuliffe. He's in this hot race out in Virginia. He's also sort of weighing in on what's going on in the schools. And we're going to hear from Department of Education Secretary from the Biden administration, Miguel Cardona, I believe is his name. And he is somebody who's also sort of wading into the schools. And so we've seen what the Biden administration has been doing, really trying to remove a lot of your local autonomy away from the localities into the federal government, taking over property through the CDC, taking over school mask mandates through the Department of Education, taking everything over through the CDC and the DOJ, and the list goes on and on. So we'll check in there. We've got a lot to talk about on that segment. We also have to check in on our next segment, segment 2. We're going to be taking a look at a Naperville lawsuit that is being drafted by firefighters to contest a vaccine mandate that is going on in Naperville. And so this is a very close to home story because our very trusted, loyal, good friend, John Halgren, is in our Locals community, and he is involved in this lawsuit. He sent me over a copy of the complaint, gave me permission to talk about it. So we're going to do a whole segment on this. We're also going to talk about some of the constitutional refreshers that we need to in order to properly go through the case. We're going to remind ourselves, what is strict scrutiny? What is a rational basis analysis? What is intermediate scrutiny? And what does the government have to show and prove if they want to sort of strip away some of your rights? In this case, this would be the right to privacy. So we'll do a little bit of a review of the complaint that was filed out of a federal district court. We'll also sort of do a quick analysis on some of the constitutional underpinnings and what those arguments may be. And so that will be interesting. We also have in our final segment little bit of a different segment here. I kind of want to open the floor up and have a actual conversation with everybody who is typically live on the show at this time. So we'll check in over on Rumble. We'll check in, of course, on Locals, and then, of course, on YouTube, where most of our audience is. And so I want to sort of get your feedback, because it's been about a year. It's been over a year since we started doing this show live every day. We went live right after Ruth Bader Ginsburg died every day. We were previously doing a show just once a week. And then when sort of the legal world got hit with that bombshell, we decided to go every day. And so we've had a lot of experience, a lot of changes on the show over the last 12 months or so. And so I actually pulled some metrics. September metrics were very not good. And so I want to actually sort of, ping the audience and open this up for some feedback. See what you think. It's been a year. I think it's always appropriate to look back on the work that you've done and then maybe give it some thought, give it some analysis. And of course, since this is a community that we're building, because we are having these live conversations every day, I would just love to get your feedback. Good, bad, ugly, whatever is in there. We're going to save that in for the last segment of the show, especially because it's Friday and a little bit more lighthearted. So we'll just open it up and make it casual in that last segment. If you want to be a part of the show, the way to do that is over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. There's a form, looks just like this. And so you can go there, fill this out. I'm going to do my very best to answer questions. If you are also on Locals, you'll notice there's one other form down there. It's a private form. If you have any feedback for me that you want to share in this show, it'll be available today. I won't read any of that on the air. So if you want to drop F-bombs my direction, that's the appropriate place to do that. So we will, I'll do my best to keep that out of the screen on the show. Also taking super chats. Yesterday we had the super chats on YouTube pop up on the screen, and we certainly will read those also at the end of every segment. So I appreciate your support there and over on Locals. If you are somebody who is looking for the clips, if you can't stay around the show for the full show, all of the clips are now moved over to this channel, Robert Gruler ESQ Clips, and that's where you'll be able to sort of pick things back up if you happen to miss the show. I would appreciate a subscription over there. Once we get to 1,000 subs over there, we can turn on some features, including monetization, so I'd appreciate that. All right, and so without any further ado, let's get into it. Governor Gavin Newsom from California came out and is now telling everybody in California that he wants to jab your kids, wants to give them the old jab. And that's a little concerning for some people for a whole slew of reasons. But he posted this today, Friday, of course, when everybody's sort of wrapping up for the week so they can go spend time with their families. Gavin Newsom came out, posted this on Twitter, says, breaking, California is going to require our kids to get the COVID-19 vaccine to come to school. So major policy change, something that everybody was already, I think, seeing the writing on the walls here. We saw that it's kind of going to start out in certain, essential businesses, and then it became a federal mandate. And we've already been hearing a lot of the arguments that Gavin Newsom is going to detail for us. He says, this is going to go into effect following full FDA approval, which is sort of presumptuous, isn't it? He kind of is putting the cart before the horse, as they say. FDA hasn't come out with full approval for kids in schools, and he's just kind of presuming that they will. And I think he's absolutely right. It's a foregone conclusion that that is coming down the pike. Our schools, he says, and we're going to spend a lot of time on this argument, so let's put a pin in this, says our schools already require vaccines for measles, mumps, and more. Why? Because vaccines work. This is about keeping our kids safe and healthy. And so in this segment, I want to be very crystal clear that I'm not challenging the efficacy of vaccines in many different ways. I'm not contesting any of the CDC guidelines or CDC data. The only thing that we really want to talk about is that argument that, we already require measles, mumps, polio, different vaccines in schools. What's the difference? Why is COVID abnormal from that? Why is that outside of the ordinary? Why is that argument not so good? And so we're going to spend some time on that. Before we do, let's see how Gavin Newsom addressed this today in front of the cameras. Here he is.
And that's why we recognize our responsibility to do more. And that's what we are announcing here today. A statewide requirement for in-person instruction for all of our children to add to a well-established list that currently includes 10 vaccinations and well-established rules and regulations that have been advanced by the legislature for decades, to add to that list the vaccination for COVID-19. We intend to do that once the FDA has fully approved the vaccine, which will give us time to work with districts, give us time to work with parents.
All right. So you can see exactly where he's going with this. It's all coming down the pike. It is now going to be rolled out as soon as the FDA comes back and approves that, which is well and good. We certainly don't want to contest the FDA. Now, I wanted to, again, mention this argument because our schools already require vaccines for the measles, the mumps, and the more. So what they're doing is they're sort of making an argument by analogy. They're saying that, well, this is a vaccine. Yes, that's true. It's been labeled and categorized that way. And so it necessarily is the same. And because we've been doing it this way for the last 40 years, we're going to just continue to do it that way. But that's not really that good of an argument. It's pretty easy to sort of rip that apart. And so we're going to be able to do that right here and now. Now, as we know, also, earlier this week, YouTube came out and they updated their vaccine misinformation policy. They don't want anybody spreading dangerous misinformation out there. I certainly don't want to be somebody who contributes to that. And so I want to make sure that we're very crystal clear on what we're doing here. And vaccines, I think, are very important. All of these policies are going to be touching everybody in the world. And now we need to be able to understand what we can talk about. So let's get very clear on this. I know this is probably in the weeds for a lot of people, but here is the vaccine policy from YouTube. Let's make sure that we don't cross it here. So it says, YouTube does not allow content that poses a serious risk of egregious harm by spreading medical misinformation about currently administered vaccines that are approved and confirmed to be safe and effective by local health authorities. Okay, not going to do that. Not going to say anything that these vaccines are not healthy, not safe, not ineffective. Again, we're only talking about the argument there about whether it's the same, whether COVID vaccines are the same as all the others. So he says, we're not going to be challenging the efficacy of these things. And when we get really granular, it says, do not post content if it includes any harmful misinformation about currently approved or administered vaccines. And if you read this like a lawyer, like I did, we got to be careful here where it says efficacy of vaccines. Content claiming that the vaccines do not reduce transmission or contraction of the disease is a no-no. So in other words, you cannot say that a vaccine does not reduce transmission. Okay, so that's different, for example, than let's say not stopping transmission. Okay, so YouTube policy says that you can say that if you come out and claim that it does not reduce transmission, that's a no-no. But nothing about stopping transmission, because I think that's pretty clear that the CDC says that the vaccines don't perfectly stop transmission. So very careful reading there. And similarly, we want to be very clear that we don't say anything that a vaccine doesn't reduce the contraction of disease. So disease meaning that it would be the negative effects of what's happening to your body as a result of the coronavirus. And so we can't say either that the vaccines are not reducing the contraction of the disease. That would be a no-no. That would be off limits. And again, we're not going to do that. So I just want to be clear that I've read the policy and I think that we're operating within it. Ingredients in the vaccines, not even going to talk about that. The vaccine safety, not even talking about that either. We're just talking about sort of the compare and contrast between this vaccine and many others. Other examples that are no-no that say that they have side effects, not talking about that, or does not reduce the risk of contracting illness, not going to talk about that, right? It's pretty clear from the data that it according to the official data, that it does in fact reduce the risk of contracting the illness. Got it. So we're going to follow within the rules. I think we're pretty good to go. The reason why I wanted to do that is because what you're going to see on this chart might seem kind of provocative if you don't have that framework. If you don't have the foundation, I want to make sure you're understanding the context of this chart, because we're going to be comparing and contrasting several different vaccines. And again, this is sort of a synopsis, right? This is sort of notes. If you do some basic research, you'll see that things fall into these categories. Without any further ado, let's look at the we already vaccinate the kids differences cheat sheet. So I posted this over on Twitter earlier, posted a couple draft versions of this before I decided to make it live over on Locals. And so we've been talking about this for a little bit of time. And so let's just go through this. And we can just sort of go through some of the other vaccines that they have talked about in this analogy that the COVID vaccine is the same as every other school vaccine. So they always say, as Gavin Newsom did, measles and mumps and other ones like polio. And so those are kind of the more common vaccines. And if you go and you do some research there, you're going to notice that I have some links down here if you download the slides, if you are a member, over at locals.com, then what you'll see is you can click these links and go check it out for yourself. But measles, generally speaking, childhood disease, if you just sort of generally throw it in there, you could say, yes, that is a childhood disease. You could say the same thing about mumps and polio, but not really about COVID. If you're just sort of generally speaking, that the disease itself, again, we're not even talking about the vaccines here. It's just the disease, measles, mumps, polio. That's why you vaccinate the kids. So in Gavin Newsom's compare and contrast, COVID is sort of an odd man out there, right? One of these things just doesn't belong. You also have under measles, you can say that it actually stops the infection, right? And under COVID, not so much. Now, again, I'm not making the argument that it doesn't reduce infection or doesn't reduce disease. I think it's pretty clear that it does from all of the official CDC data, but it just doesn't stop it in the same way that other vaccines do, because that's, we're sort of going through that data in real time right now. Same conversation about transmission. Measles vaccine, mump vaccine, polio vaccine all stops transmission of the virus. But when you get to COVID, it reduces transmission of the virus, which is exactly what we see here, right? It does, in fact, reduce transmission of the virus. It just doesn't stop it entirely. And I think that sort of is in line with the CDC as well. And so I think that you can sort of make that same analysis and say that, oh, the COVID vaccine is just not exactly like the others, at least in the argument that Gavin Newsom is framing out for us. We've also talked a little bit about this, the animal reservoir content that is sort of, being debated whether, COVID could ever be ultimately eliminated because it's now showing up in animals. They're seeing that, gorillas have it in the Atlanta Zoo. You can see the link down there. And so you don't see gorillas with measles. You don't see gorillas with mumps. You don't see gorillas with polio like you do with COVID. You see gorillas and other animals. I think deer have a bunch of COVID, going through them because it's a coronavirus. It's a different type of virus. And so, again, the COVID vaccine is just not exactly like the others. Also, never heard of a president coming out here and saying you have to go and get measles, mumps, and polio vaccines if you are wanting to continue to work in America. It's never happened to my knowledge in this country, but it certainly has happened here under Joe Biden with COVID-19. So again, one of these things is just not like the others. Now, we can go back and take a look at the same conversation, compare and contrast the two. What we see is the medical data history. Measles goes all the way back to 1963 when it in fact was ultimately approved by the FDA on that date. And so on this chart, what I did is I went from the identification of the virus to the total amount of time until it got to trials. So for measles, this would say that in 1954, they identified the measles virus, took 4 years for them to identify it, pull it out, synthesize it. Then once they got to trials, it then took 5 years from 1958 over to 1963 in order to actually go through and be approved. So it took about 9 years from the time it was first identified until it became approved. Same type of story with mumps. Originally approved or found in 1945, 3 years to synthesize it, pull it out, extract it, and then 19 years in trials. Okay, so measles was only 5 years. Mumps, we can see here, is 19 years in trials, which is a lot. So you get a lot of data. And of course, you have a lot of information about what this does to kids in schools and all of that stuff. You go over to polio and you're going to see, oh man, a lot of time went into those trials. And a lot of this data just comes over from the historyofvaccines.org. A ton of really good data over there. You can actually see the entire timeline and progression. So I would really encourage you to check that out. But polio, they first found it in 1908, took 27 years to synthesize that out. And then from 1935 to 1960, now you've got 25 years of trials. Now, it's a lot of data. You're going to be able to see how that impacts kids because they were given it for, a number of different years. And so, yeah, that is a little bit different than COVID, because with COVID, you can see now it took 1 year to synthesize it from 2020 or 2019 to 2020. And then we got a vaccine past trials in just 9 months. Now, the obvious argument there is that, well, Rob, we found this in 2020. And so, it's not like, we have iPhones now. We're not using, rotary phones like they were back in the 60s, the 40s, and so on and so forth. And I totally understand that. Now, the sort of response to that is, yeah, but the human body hasn't changed all that much. Human body is kind of the same thing, and we're talking about new technology and how that interfaces with the human body. And you can sort of debate on whether those extensive trials are still necessary or not. FDA doesn't seem to think so. They approved it, said it's good to go. CDC says they're ready to go. Joe Biden already got his booster shot, so we know where the establishment lies on this. They're saying, nope, 9 months is good enough. Yeah, we've been trialing it enough, and so we just keep going with it. But the rest of, some people might say that maybe you need more time before you make an ultimate determination on whether this is something that should just be, thrown into kids. So it is a little bit, I think, of a dishonest argument from Gavin Newsom and anybody else out there screeching, we already vaccinate the kids, it's no different. It is a little bit different because we're talking about a whole bunch of differences, as you can see articulated on that chart. So if you are over on Twitter, want to download the chart, it is there on my at Robert Grueller ESQ. If you're over on Locals, these slides are available for you. If you want to communicate against that argument that it's just the same thing, idiot, why are you even contesting this? It's not quite the same thing. And again, I'm not making any arguments. FDA comes out and says that the vaccine is approved for 5-year-olds, whatever. That's their decision. Their CDC, whatever they want to do with that, that's all well and good. The argument here is it's just not the same thing, though. And so they can come up with a better argument. They can say, well, the FDA said it's approved and therefore it's the best thing that's ever happened. You can be like Governor Hochul and say that this is a gift from God and I'm the new COVID Jesus if you want to. I don't care. But when you start mandating it and you start to make arguments that are a little bit on rocky ground, that's when we start to have some concerns about that, regardless of the efficacy, the safety of the vaccine, which according to everybody is very safe, effective, and free. Okay, so that is the differences, the compare and contrast there. Now, a little bit more details about exactly what's going on in California. This is a first in the action nation. Normally, when I come on the show, I say that the canary in the coal mine is over in New York. Not the case here. Definitely looks like Gavin Newsom is sort of trying to take that mantle back. Issued a mandate on Friday requiring all eligible public and private school children in California to be vaccinated. Policy will start fall 2022. Of course, presumably after the FDA approves it. Right now, the FDA says only 16 or older are eligible for this thing, but children as young as 12 have been able to receive it under emergency authorization. For that reason, states say that the mandate is not going to be available until next fall. It's going to take effect for students 12 and over as early as January. And then there will be full approval for a lower age range, for that age range. Let's see. Once in effect, students will not be allowed to attend classes in person on campus without being vaccinated. Just as with any other required childhood vaccine, medical and religious exemptions will be available. So, all right, so there you go. That's what's happening in California. There have been challenges to similarly situated attempts here, and we have one that just was breaking news right before I got on the show. The U.S. Supreme Court now came out, and it's allowing a school vaccine mandate to remain. This story came out from Andrew Chung over at Reuters, says that a U.S. Supreme Court Justice, Sonia Sotomayor, on Friday refused to block a requirement that all of New York City's public school teachers and employees be vaccinated against COVID-19. So in other words, the challenge is being declined so that the mandate can remain. Sotomayor denied a challenge by a group of 4 teachers and teaching assistants who sought to halt the city's vaccine mandate while litigating over the dispute continues in lower courts. Public school system workers were ordered to be vaccinated by 5 p.m. on August 1st or face unpaid leave until December 22nd. These school teachers sued to stop that from happening, worked its way up to the Supreme Court, emergency orders. This is coming out of Judge Sotomayor's circuit, and so it lands on her desk. She is sort of denying it so that the mandate can remain in effect and that it can start on October 1st. So we know that that's where that's going, Supreme Court. Now, again, not necessarily a good thing if you're challenging the vaccine mandates, but it is also something that it's only with Sonia Sotomayor. So don't consider this to be a final Supreme Court ruling. She's just allowing it to go forward, just like some of the conservatives have done with other legal challenges, in particular the abortion case coming out of Texas. But this was breaking. I haven't had a lot of time, or at any time really before the show, to go take a deeper dive on this, but we certainly will. And we're also talking about other vaccine mandates in our second segment. Now we have a Assemblyman from California who's calling out Newsom for some of his hypocrisy. Let's take a look at what he has to say. He says specifically that Gavin Newsom is corrupt and hypocritical, for these vaccine mandates. He said that today, Gavin Newsom announced a, quote, first in the nation. However, just days ago, he actively tried to block a mandate for California corrections officers. That's weird. So K through 12 now get a mandate, but California correctional officers don't. Why not? Oh, well, Assemblyman Kiley says that, well, it's because they donated $1.75 million to his campaign, which is a nice way to get political favors done, especially in California. We've got, in explaining his opposition to the corrections mandate, Newsom said it is working with those who remain unvaccinated with educational resources. Oh, that's nice. Access to clinicians, experts to questions, and ample access to the vaccine. But I guess that doesn't work for kids or parents, so that's nice. There is no reason to the governor's policy of education and access why it cannot guide vaccination policies in schools. He says that here he's allowing his special interests to dictate pandemic policy, abuse of public trust, which I think is very accurate there. So it has been very interesting now. Now, apparently in California, they are also not going to be mandating these for the teachers. That's interesting. At least as far as we know today. But the students have to get it, but the teachers' unions say that teachers don't. Here's Gavin Newsom. He went on CNN after announcing this policy, and here is somebody from CNN asking him questions about it.
So many parents, and maybe it's a minority, but there's still enough of them, and they are a loud minority who don't even want mask mandates, right? Last month, an elementary school teacher near Sacramento was hospitalized after a parent allegedly attacked them over mask mandates. Who are you expecting to enforce this?
Well, you know what? If you want to attack someone, attack me. I was the first governor of the country to require masking for all our public schools. I was the first governor of the country to require vaccine verifications and/or testing, and now we're leaning in again. You want to go after someone, go after me. Don't go after school board members. Don't go after these innocent folks that are just trying to do the right damn thing. I mean that. We're better than that. Our kids are watching. Kids are watching the adults, and they're mirroring our behaviors, not what we say, but what we do. We're better than this. You've got a problem? Come after me. Stop attacking and antagonizing these public servants all across this country, not just across my state. They don't deserve it.
Man, he's pretty tough, isn't he? Wow. You come after me, I'll take care of you. What are you going to do there, Gavin? What are you going to do, man? These guys are it's like a joke. Like, what did he say there? Like, did you listen to that? What did he say? Nothing. He just said, don't attack them, come after me. All right, so he's a very strong fighter for the teachers' unions. We've got it. Thank you, Gavin. Now, again, this is something we've been talking about on the show, the slow creep of the totalitarianism of the government sticking their dirty, grubby tentacles into everything that happens locally, and that includes your schools now. We talked about this last year when we were diving into some of the critical race theory stuff and had a lot of conversations when that battle was going on, but it's not going to stop there, right? And we're seeing that this has been used now through COVID to go in there and just get right into the schools. Ron DeSantis said, well, if you impose some of these things that we have prohibitions against, then we're going to defund you. What happened? The feds came in and said, oh, don't worry about it. We'll fund you. We'll just take your own tax money and divest you of it locally, and we're going to prohibit you from using your tax dollars as incentives or disincentives to comply with locally dictated policy. And we're just going to take your own money and give it back in violation of that locally mandated policy, which is just, insulting as hell. But they're going to continue to do this. In fact, in Virginia, there's a very, very tricky election coming up on November 2nd, where there is a former governor, Terry McAuliffe, going against some Republican in Virginia. So it was supposed to be a blowout in Virginia with a Democrat winning by a large margin, and that continues to get narrow a little bit. And so what we're seeing here is that the White House is very concerned about this race, because if they lose, it might be indicative of what's happening in the upcoming term. And so there's a lot of people paying very close attention to this. And I want to show you a clip of Terry McAuliffe right now, or during a debate previously, where he was sort of opining about what teachers should be able to do relative to parents regarding their kids. In other words, How involved should parents be in their children's education? Should they be going to these school board meetings? We just heard from Gavin Newsom. Don't you go to those meetings and I don't know, give your opinion about what's happening to your children. That's ridiculous. Why would you do that? Why don't you come after me, go over to Gavin Newsom and have that conversation with him? But here, Terry McAuliffe is going to be kind of on the other side of the country, backing up Gavin Newsom, saying, yeah, we don't want teachers to be influenced or bothered by those petty parents. It's only their kids. Just give us the kids. Let us take care of their education. Don't you worry about it. Put your mask back on, go home, and turn on CNN and vote blue. Here is Terry McAuliffe talking about kids.
Veto books, Glenn, not to be knowledgeable about it, also take them off the shelves. And I'm not going to let parents come into schools and actually take books out and make their own decision.
You vetoed it.
So, yeah, I stopped the bill that I don't think parents should be telling schools what they should teach. But, I get really tired.
Parents shouldn't be telling schools what they should be teaching. So, I don't have any kids, but I would certainly want input on what is being taught to my kid. I would guess that would be a pretty fundamental part of raising a child. What are they being taught and how is that going down? And I think the best way to do that is locally, is you have different people, sort of opining to their local school boards about what is going on in the schools. That's really the only way that you have accountability over any of these things. Now, of course, the response there would be, well, Rob, you can't have individual curriculum for all different students. What if a parent comes in and says, well, I want to teach critical race theory? And you have another parent that says, well, I don't want to teach critical race theory. And so now you have a debate on what to do with this, which is why school choice is such a brilliant thing. Why we can say, well, how about you have a school that teaches CRT over here and another one that teaches non-CRT over here, and parents get to decide what to do with their kids, which might be a more sensible way to approach this, rather than having Terry McAuliffe and the teachers unions and the school boards that don't really respond to the local parents, evidently based on what we've been seeing. They just get to sort of establish a uniform system of indoctrination that they can just permeate all throughout the entire state or the entire locality. And if you want to challenge that, it's too bad. There is no school choice. You just have to send your kid there, or you got to go, I guess, take them to private schools, or you got to do some homeschooling. There's just no choice there other than what the Democrats want to teach you. And he's doubling down on it. Here he is again saying, I don't really want teachers or parents involved with the teachers. Here's that.
Do you think parents should have a say in the curriculum?
Listen, we have a board of ed working with the local school boards to determine the curriculum for our schools. You don't want parents coming in every different school jurisdiction.
You don't want parents coming in every different school jurisdiction. Why not? Why wouldn't you? I mean, it's their kids. But folks, it's because I forgot about this. We're all too dumb to know better, right? The teachers know better than we do about how to educate kids. And so if we maybe want to talk about, educating kids with some financial literacy, some historical literacy, some things that are connected to reality, then I guess we're just out of our minds. We're just too dumb for that. So we should just let Terry McAuliffe and all of the professional investigators and educators and all the people who are establishing these curriculums, just let them do their job. Okay. You're just too dumb. Also, you're questioning, all these other things that the government is doing. So you're obviously an extremist. Let us take care of the kids. There are kids now. So that's what's going on. And it's also happening at the federal level. Let's take a look at what's going on there. We've got the East Coast over in Virginia. We've got the West Coast over in California. And now we've got the big, disgusting tentacle beast on top, which is the federal government. Let's hear from Department of Education Secretary Miguel Cardona. Here he is being questioned by a senator today.
I was a little disturbed.
Real quick on this one, I forgot. Let me set this up a little bit. So Miguel Cardona is the Department of Education Secretary, and he's being asked specifically about these school board meetings. Now, we've watched a lot of these. Parents coming in, very upset about the mask mandates, now going to be very upset about the vaccine mandates, previously upset about some of the critical race theory stuff that was being taught, and the list goes on and on. The educational system is continuing to sort of, fail, right? It's been pretty much broken for the last 18 months, as far as I can tell. I don't have kids, but a lot of people who work here, people on our team, they do have kids. And so I've been sort of watching what's going on from afar. Now, this is Miguel Cardona, now the Department of Education Secretary, being asked about this specifically. What about those people that were going to those board meetings, you said something pretty bad about them. I want to make sure that you're not going to double down on that. You're not going to double down on that, are you, Mr. Secretary? Here he is.
I was a little disturbed, and I want to see if you really meant the comment. And it was in relation to why are they doing this? And I'm going to quote this. And your response for that engagement was, I think it's a proxy for being mad that their guy didn't win. And I'm quoting it verbatim here. And I know you probably didn't mean that, and I'll give you a chance to retract it. Is that something you'd want to take back?
I know that across the country, our school board meetings are a little bit more intense, but I'll tell you, school boards are unwavering in their support for returning students to school and providing a safe learning environment.
What about the statement? And I agree with you 100% there. Would you want to take that back to not politicize something where I think it's an honest, sincere difference of opinion across the country? And I don't know that I'd want to be on record with that.
Senator, I'll tell you the lack of civility in some of our meetings is disappointing and frustrating, especially because our superintendents and educators and board members, and you should know you're a board member, they've worked tirelessly over the last 18 months to provide a safe environment.
And I know it can get rowdy, and I'll take it that you don't want to retract it at this point.
Yeah, so rowdy, it was very dangerous in some places.
Yeah. Doesn't want to retract it. Of course he doesn't. Well, it was a good question. Hey, you want to retract that? It sounds like you're sort of dismissing all of these parents' claims. You're just saying, oh, well, they're just throwing a temper tantrum because their preferred candidate lost the election. And so we don't really need to care about any of their actual claims. This is the guy who's running the education department. We don't have to care about the parents. We don't have to care about the Trump supporting parents. It's only half the country. But they don't have any valid claims. They're not upset about masks. They're not upset about vaccines. They're not upset about remote learning. They're not upset about any of these teacher unions delaying the reopening of schools at all. They're just, idiot Trump supporters. And by the way, they're violent as well. That's what it's what he said. So he's just kind of somebody who is not answering anything. He's just along for the ride. He knows where this is going. They're remaking the school systems just like they're remaking everything else, remaking the IRS, remaking financial controls, remaking the border, remaking everything around you, including the ability to just go to a restaurant without having to show your papers. So the entire restructuring is happening right before our eyes, and he can't even answer a simple question. It would have been nice if he would have just said, yeah, I think they're morons. And but he didn't. At least I would have given him some respect for at least sticking to his opinion here. But this is where it really gets into this. This is where you can see the fundamental shift that's happening between these people. It's sort of the bifurcation of society in yet another way. We already have the segregation taking place with the vaxxed versus the unvaxxed. The vaxxed can get on an airplane if Feinstein has her way. The vaxxed can have dinner together if they play in the NBA. But if not, well, then you don't get to fly around anymore. You don't get to eat with your teammates if you are an NBA player anymore because segregation is well underway. In fact, in the NBA, they're basically like slavery now. They're asking them to go around and do things, but they're not even going to give them their paychecks. Yeah, that's according to the story we covered yesterday. So that's what's going on. Now it's happening in schools where the education system is going to be the primary stakeholder or somebody who's very important in your children's education, and the parents are going to be set aside. It's not your house anymore. The CDC said so. It's not your body. Joe Biden said so. You have to inject something if you want your job. And guess what? They're not your kids anymore. They're our kids with the Department of Education. Here he is saying that, parents aren't really the primary stakeholders.
Fairly quick answers here because I want to get to Secretary Becerra. Do you think parents should be in charge of their child's education as the primary stakeholder?
I believe parents are important stakeholders, but I also believe educators have a role in determining educational programming.
And I think that's going to be a little out of focus what I think you're going to find across all elements of education. Since they pay the bills, they raise the kids, they probably need to be the primary spokespeople for their own kids' good education.
All right. So, yeah, parents are kind of important, but they also shouldn't have any say in what we do because we're educators. We're smarter than everybody else. We have an agenda and we got to get to it. Okay. And we can't show you what we're going to be teaching because there's just too much at stake here for us. Once we got the kids, then we can sort of continue to indoctrinate them and you know where that goes. So let's take a look at some questions over from Watching the Watchers locals.com. Let me see here. We got to make sure I've got these puppies queued up on this one. And our first question here, nope, that was from yesterday. We've got our first one from Shades, says 90% of California voted to remove Newsom. Fortified elections. Even the tons of Dems voted to remove him. But he's still there, isn't he? We have Vienticus Prime says, I can't wait until the days where everyone gets reminded to use their over-the-counter kits to give themselves daily booster shots. Yeah, well, there's a new pill out that looks promising. We'll see where that one goes. Geomancy Games is here, says Newsom and the ASL interpreter clearly indoors not wearing masks. Shame. Off to the gulag with them. After all, it's what the left would demand from people choosing not to wear masks. Good to see you, Geomancy. He's on YouTube. We have three girlies in the house, says, you don't get the measles vaccine if you've already had measles. Don't get the chickenpox vaccine if you've already had chickenpox. If you have natural immunity, you don't need the vaccine. Even if the school requires for you to have certain vaccines, if you've already had the disease, they won't give you the vaccine. This vaccine is not the same as the others who's been around for 50 years. A blanket mandate does not take into account the natural immunity. It's not appropriate public health policy. Rand Paul put it out there in that clip against Javier Becerra. Played some of that yesterday. Very good. Gavin Newsom has now made the argument for school choice in California. Literally has made it a possibility for any parent to avoid this shot to have school choice, including homeschooling. Yeah, and I think that's where a lot of this stuff is going to go, rightfully so. It should go to more school choice. If parents want to vax their kids, all right, that's your prerogative. And if you don't, go somewhere else. And that's where I think, there might be a silver lining to a lot of this, that it starts to break up some of the cohesion at a lower local level. Shades is here, says, let's see. Oh, that's on the last segment, so we'll get to that. Let's see what else. We've got three girlies, says the lions at the Akron Zoo just tested positive for COVID. The only people who came in contact with the lions are the keepers. It's the lion variant at the Akron Zoo. That's really fun. Thank you for that, three girlies. It's right. It's everywhere. We've got Me Loves Dog says, is Newsom aware that the public school system policy allows for medical and religious exemptions of all the required childhood vaccines? Will this exemption qualify for the COVID vax? It's a good question, right? And I think it has to. I think it probably will, especially if he's going to sort of try to bundle it up with all of the other vaccines. It would be obviously sort of inappropriate, I think, if you had a carved out exemptions in California for the others, but not for COVID. From a legal perspective, a lawyer would go, well, why are you making COVID more restrictive? And then the government would have to justify that. So I would presume that it would be along the same lines as the others. Vienticus is here, says, not that this has to do with COVID or any of the data or anything you presented of any of that type, just felt the need to point out that I don't make it a habit of throwing out over 100 years of science in favor of 2 years of propaganda. Again, only applicable to only one instance in history. So that's good news. So that was over from who's that? Vienticus Prime said that. Yeah, it's a good point, I think. Very well taken. Perry Masonary says, if there is no real depth data on negative reactions for children, then this policy becomes suspicious. What say you? Well, presumably before the FDA approves this thing, they're going to have to come up with the data and justify it. And so we'll have to see what that looks like at the time of the approval. But, certainly you can't go against the FDA in this country or the CDC or the Biden administration or YouTube. They know what's best for all of us. We have I'm Not Gas says, you notice how Newsom is adopting Obama mannerisms with his speech cadence and his hand gestures? Yeah, I've seen that with Newsom, and Kamala's doing the same thing too. She's sort of changing her presentation. They're both gearing up for the election in 2024, presumably when Joe Biden, doesn't run again. Let's see what else. Thunder 7 is here. Says, no misinformation here, just facts. The FDA did not approve the booster jabs by a panel of 16-2. They approved a Pfizer vaccine. I can't read this. I can't read that, Thunder 7. It's just a little bit, I think, too on the line there with some of the YouTube policies. We got to be careful about it. I know. Listen, as soon as we're able to sort of take this stuff off of YouTube, we'll do it. Drearier Spider says, our children are watching and mirroring our actions. We need better. Says the scumbag whose family tried to bribe rape victim Rose McGowan to stay silent about her attacker, Harvey Weinstein, because he's a big donor to her political party. Yeah, Gavin Newsom is not the pillar of excellence for children throughout America, as far as I can tell. Geomancy Game says, as a father of a special needs child, the only way I would get him on an IEP some 10 years ago is because I raised absolute hell. It's the only way these schools will learn is if the parents make a loud ruckus, which will probably be illegal soon, since Cardano said that the parents got very violent. It's probably going to be a new version of extremists now. Racial extremism, homegrown extremism, domestic violent extremism, now concerned parental extremism, I think is probably where that's going to go. Vienticus Prime says, isn't California big on identity politics? Just tell people that you medically identify as the control group and you're good. Or just identify as vaccinated. Yeah, we all identify as vaccinated. Why? Well, because we said so. I mean, if you can say that you're a pregnant man, why can't you be vaccinated? I don't know. Monster One says, since COVID is a religion now, I'm claiming I'm a COVID atheist. Well, then you're just going to be banished to COVID hell, aren't you? Screw Gladys is here. Says, off topic, in NSW Australia, the tyrant Premier Gladys resigned after corruption charges from the ICAC. Time to celebrate. The premier responsible for one of the worst lockdowns have resigned. Next goal is John Barilaro, and whose place is responsible for the lockdowns prosecuted at Nuremberg 2.0. Is that still going on in Australia? Wow. We have another one. Kenny 1B is here. Says it's all about equity. If you can afford to homeschool or send your children to private school, these Democrats are trying to push you to do that. The end result is for more taxpayer resources going to the education of the less wealthy. Good comment. We have another one from It's Ed. Says, hey, Rob, besides being parents concerned about what is being taught to their kids, we all have a right to attend school board meetings because we pay taxes. Our tax money is going to go to the school systems, paying teachers, paying board members, paying principals, etc. We have a right to make any demand we want. We're the ones that are ultimately paying it. Perhaps these idiots forgot that. Too bad Newsom was voted back in. I guess California residents really don't care that much. Otherwise, they would have kicked this guy out. School system is broken. If you homeschool your kids, you still have to pay for public schools through taxes, which is insane, right? I pay taxes for the kids, for the children. And you go, what? I don't have kids. Why do I pay taxes for them? Well, it's for the children. It's because it's for the greater good of society. Okay, I can wrap my head around that in a functional educational system. All right, let's see. It says, school system is broken. If you homeschool your kids, if you pay for private school, you have to pay for schooling your kids twice through tuition and taxes. I don't have kids. I still have to pay. Yet they want to keep us from board meetings? Duh, what is what he said. It's Ed. I think it's a great point, Ed. And look, I happen to support highly educated children and, a functional society. But are we getting that? I went to school. I know what it's like. It wasn't great. I went to a private school. I was very, very blessed. My mom worked her rear end off in order to make that happen, and it paid off well. But it was because we made good decisions, I'd say, outside to the best of our family's ability, right? Some people don't have those options. And I think that the public schools have gotten dramatically worse based on what I'm seeing, based on what I'm hearing. But I don't know. We have Stephen Colbert is here, says, did you see my vaccine segment? Breakthrough in state propaganda. Oops, I said the loud part quiet. I mean, it's comedic genius. If you disagree, you just don't understand comedy. Also, I'm adopting a baby just to get it vaccinated because vax rates are life goals now. That's from Stephen Colbert. I did see that little stupid clip of him and all of the dancing needles bouncing around on the show, which is, it's like out of a movie or like a dystopian novel. It's not any good. Let's see what else. Former LEO is giving us some data on deaths for young people, saying it's very, very low. Lawsuits by parents to safeguard children are by forcing teachers to mask. Yeah, with some death numbers there. Thank you for that, LEO, former LEO. We have Screw the Democrats here. Says, why am I not surprised the Democrats don't want parents involved in education? Because they want to indoctrinate children. Also, they want to engage in slavery in the NBA, as well as segregation, as well as concentration camps, while the Republicans are not performing, saying it's all about power. That's from some anonymous person. Former LEO says that data came from the CDC. Georgia Peaches is here, says, What's up, Georgia Peaches? Says, guess they got those. I can't say that. I can't say that. Jeremy Matrita says, I didn't notice. Did California lawmakers write a law, or are governors still able to dictate unconstitutional mandates? Yes. I mean, the governors, it's a free-for-all out there. They can do whatever they want. It's been that way for 18 months, Jeremy. Hello, where you been, man? It's a free-for-all. And the courts are just like, well, sounds good to me. Oh, COVID? Yeah, COVID's dangerous. What do you want to do? Oh, take away somebody's property? No problem at all. Here you go. Until it goes up to the Supreme Court. Tweak is here, says, I'm sorry that I'm going on about this, but you... This is great. All right, Tweak's here. Tweak is not from the United States. He says, I am sorry that I'm going to have to go on about this, but people need to wake the F up when it comes to schools and their agenda to literally take over guardianship of your kids. These school boards and teachers unions are the dirty little commie tricksters who literally will do anything to take your kids from you in order to turn them into their useful little propaganda army. Look at China. Look at Soviets. Look at parts of Germany as well. Especially in communist countries, students have been on the front lines early in cultural revolutions. Don't think it won't happen here as well if we don't make sure to stop it. I don't even have kids. I'm not thinking about getting kids soon, so this is not a personal issue for me per se, but I've learned enough from older relatives and friends to recognize the warning signs. That has always been obvious to me. When I was in college, it was like the dumbest thing ever because I had to go to all these stupid woke classes. And my friends, that was in 2004 to 2008. That was years ago. And the whole system has changed pretty dramatically since then. They've gotten a lot less secret about it. Back then, I had to take this women in other cultures class. The worst experience educationally I've ever had. It was insulting. It was offensive. It was something that was lunacy. I mean, even if you listen to some of the teachings about their critiques of modern medicine, you're going, this is wacky. But anyways, they want you to teach that, right? Because they have to, I guess in order to be educationally improved, you have to be somebody who is ridiculed and berated and made to be a fool. I guess that's good for competence and that's good for functional characteristics that are necessary in society, I guess. But I'm not as smart as Dr. Cardona, who is, of course, the Department of Education Secretary. Thank you for that comment there, Tweak. D-Rod says, where is the data on vaccinating pregnant women? Yet the FDA, CDC, Fauci telling pregnant women to vaccinate for COVID. I don't know if they're recommending that or not. Vientica says, you're right, Rob. Identify as trans vaccinated. So it's basically like, I think it's a free pass. You can kind of go anywhere, probably in the world. You know how like I just was on an airplane. I have TSA pre-check. Like, oh, come on in. Oh, it's very cozy on this line. That line's, it's not so cozy. This is a very cozy line. If you're a trans vaccinated, I think you get a better line. You get at least in California, you get a very, very fast line and probably access to the governor's, back office. I don't know. We have good comment from Vienticus. Monster One says, Rob, they are already calling these parents domestic terrorists for questioning school boards. So there you go. We knew that was coming. Didn't take long for that to happen. Heather Bostic is here. Says, would these vaccine mandates fall under the Nuremberg Code? I've gotten that question a lot, and I don't know. I haven't really read the Nuremberg Code, and I don't know that would supersede anything that is happening here in the United States because our pillar is our Constitution. And so I've always sort of defaulted back to the Constitution rather than some, sort of international treaty that I just think it's a better argument is to focus on the Constitution, the right to privacy, free exercise of religion, free assembly, free association. All of those are pretty fundamental. I don't think you need to go to the Nuremberg Code, but I just haven't looked into it. I mean, I'm happy to. I just haven't looked into it. So I apologize. I can't answer that question. The last villain is here, says the problem with the education system has always been the lack of attention paid by parents. Wayward Pines was about the kids being indoctrinated. Have you read or seen it? I have not heard of that one. Wayward Pines. Let me cue this one up. Make sure that I save this. It looks like it's a mystery science fiction television series from 2015. No, I have not seen that. Thank you for the comment there, the last villain. And one more over here from Greg Marat says, Rob, I read that more kids are dying from gang violence than COVID. Wonder if Newsom is also going to be handing out bulletproof vests. Probably not, Greg, but maybe he should, especially in some parts of California. where that might be a higher risk. I don't know. We have Curtis Bartles in the house with a super chat over on YouTube. Says, happy Rocktober, everyone. Let's see if that is going to play. There it is. That is from Curtis Bartle. Happy Rocktober indeed, my friends. Glad to be here with you. Over on Rumble, we got a Rumble rant, which is a super chat version of that. And it says, thanks for continuing to stream on Rumble. Happy to. Says, I encourage anyone watching on YouTube to move over to pro free speech Rumble. It's not a bad idea, folks. A couple other people chatting away over there. That was from Tatone. We have Southern Bix 07 NACL and the Burt are over there chatting away on Rumble. Shout outs over on Locals to Farmer's Daughter, I'm Not Gas. We've got Soul Viking in the house, Jeremy Matrita, Mustang Jeff, Sir Kexalot, Soul Viking is in the house, along with many others. Shout outs on YouTube. I see Curtis Bartles over there. Zulu's in the house, Half Irish, Linda, Vijaya, Lean, Anything Goes, and N. Chester County News. Thank you, everybody, for your support and being part of this show. All right, we're going to jump into the next segment as soon as I take a cough break. All right, so we're going to be talking about, oh yeah, that's right. We're talking about somebody from our very own Locals community. Naperville Firefighters are now suing Governor Pritzker over a vaccine and testing mandate. This is a story that hits close to home on our Locals community. We have one of the firefighters who is involved in this lawsuit named John Halgren. And so we're going to talk about this. We have a copy of the complaint that John sent to me and gave us full permission to talk about. So we're going to go through it. Quite good. And we're going to do a little bit of a constitutional review about how some of this stuff works. Because again, what we're talking about is the government making decisions that many people, in my opinion, legitimately are saying is violating on some of their fundamental rights. You have rights that are guaranteed to you by purview of being a U.S. citizen, guaranteed in the Bill of Rights. And if the government is going to pass a law or do something that is going to be arguably taking those things away, well, the citizens have to fight back for that. And so we're going to talk about how that works constitutionally speaking, do a quick refresher on what strict scrutiny is, intermediate scrutiny, rational basis, take a look at due process and equal protection claims, and then go through some of the complaint line by line and give some analysis there. We're going to jump off with a headline over from Naperville, Illinois, says that 6 firefighters are suing the city governor and Edward Elmhurst Healthcare over the vaccine and testing mandates. Lawsuit is asking a federal judge to decide if the government can force a public employee to take a vaccine. Got to pay your taxes. You've got to, drive on the right side of the road. Can the government also, though, force you to take a vaccine? Firefighters in Naperville say no, the mandate is a violation of their constitutional rights. September 3rd is when Governor Pritzker issued the order. Earlier this year, they were first ordered to have their shots by September 19th and a second one if needed within a month. Those who decided not to get vaccinated are going to be tested on a weekly basis, according to the order under the governor. Firefighters say the order violates first responders' fundamental right to their bodily autonomy to make health decisions in accordance with their beliefs and conscience, which is, I think, exactly right. And I think that even many people on the Democratic side of the aisle would agree with that, but only in the purview, the context of abortion. If it has to do with injecting something into yourself, bodily autonomy is not so valued anymore, is it? So where is Naperville? I've seen John on our monthly Locals meetup, which is happening tomorrow, October 2nd, and once again every month if you're a supporter over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. But he's been on the show. He's been around our community for a long period of time, and I don't really know where Naperville is. I looked it up. It's right outside of Chicago, just so we know where it is, south of Milwaukee. And so you can see if you zoom in there, Naperville is right where that red dot is. So right on sort of the outskirts of Chicago. Now, I also went on to the federal court docket where this case has been filed. Here is what the sort of last week proceedings look like, and then we'll see what happens with this lawsuit moving forward. But we can see back on September 23rd, a complaint was filed, and a number of different individuals are part of this complaint. We've got Joel Fox, Gil Cortez, John Stiegler, Chris Gueron. We've got John Halgren in the house, Robert McCormick. They filed the filing fee and filed the civil complaint. So we're going to take a look at the complaint. The case was assigned to Honorable Judge Robert Blakely. An attorney for the plaintiffs entered their appearance, filed the civil cover sheet. We've got other motions by the plaintiff for a preliminary injunction. We're not going to look at that because it's sort of a lot of the same stuff we've already been talking about. Remember, a preliminary injunction is sort of, hey, this is happening very quickly, court. In other words, the governor is going to be instituting this mandate like soon. Like he just said, it's coming out in early September. We got to get shots by the end of September. Like, we need you to stop this right now. It's a preliminary injunction. It's asking the court to make a decision quickly. And so it's got a lot of those same arguments about, there's going to be some serious consequences if we don't get a decision on this relatively quickly. And so we're not going to spend time on that. We're going to look at more of the the original filing, the complaint, which has more of the meat and potatoes that we're interested in. The emergency petition was presented, and we have a minute entry setting a telephonic status hearing for September 28th. So that was a few days ago. And then they reset the telephonic status hearing out to September 30th. And so they had that. We'll take a look at what happened after the fact. All right, so let's take a look at the actual complaint. This is the Naperville Firefighters. This is being filed out of the U.S. District Court for the Northern District of Illinois. 22 pages long. We're not going to go through the whole thing, but you can see that John Halgren is right there in the house along with the other 5 firefighters. They are suing the city of Naperville, Governor J. Robert Pritzker, along with Edward Elmhurst Healthcare. So 3 different defendants, all being sued by these 6 firefighters here. Introduction. They're telling us in March 2020, that's when they declared the national emergency under Donald Trump. They say American life was irreparably changed by COVID and the government's response to it, which was, some people say, way worse than the original underlying virus. During that time, paramedics like John, who were already heroes, began to become even more vital to the health and safety of millions of Americans. Literally, before we had sufficient data on anything about COVID, before we knew to understand how dangerous this was, they were already out there on the front line in America's response to the virus. They continued to treat patients in close quarters, even when it was possible that they suffered from COVID-19 and were therefore contagious. And that's exactly right? The healthcare providers, firefighters, police officers, nurses, doctors, everybody was just jumping in. Like, I'll go help out. And that was a pretty cool thing. But a lot of those people are being dumped on now after the fact. They went onto the front lines. They were there storming the beaches to fight COVID, but they're kind of useless now. We don't care about them anymore. They're kind of, thank you, your job has been done. We don't need you anymore. Go get the vaccine or else you're fired. And so that's kind of where this is going. Now, this lawsuit says the state of Illinois and the city of Naperville is threatening to terminate its firefighter and their paramedics unless they agree to take the jab. Or they've got to submit to weekly testing like subhuman individuals. They've already, some of them, contracted COVID-19, and therefore they're largely immune to it. But that doesn't matter. It's about bending the knee, isn't it? The implication that these heroes are somehow public health hazards is wrong, does a disservice to them and the health of the people in this state. So we have the parties. We know these are the firefighters. City of Naperville is a corporation in Illinois. Edward Elmhurst, let me cough. Naperville, Edward Elmhurst operates a hospital in Naperville, which is located in the Northern District of Illinois. Got an EMS medical director. Governor Jay Pritzker, of course, is the governor of Illinois. We have facts that are common to all cases. COVID-19 first detected in Wuhan, as we know. There was a series of events that happened after the fact. Virus appeared. There were estimates that 2.2 million people were going to drop dead of this thing. Number has been not that. They were thinking that 9% of people would die. And this was that same figure that I saw. Remember when Donald Trump kind of came out of the White House and he looked a lot less orange? He kind of looked a little bit white, kind of like, oh, shoot. We've got to make some serious decisions here. I think that was the day that they broke that news to him. Hey, Donald, like 2.2 million people are going to die. Then that's when he said, oh, okay, here, you guys can drive this thing. It's on you. And that's when everything, I think, went off the rails. Despite the terrifying predictions, paramedic like the plaintiffs here, were frequently among the first medical professionals to encounter those patients. And as a result, they became one of the hardest hit subgroups in March and April of 2020. A lot of sacrifices were made. Thank you to those people who made those sacrifices. Until now, the fire department did not require any of their employees to get this COVID-19 testing. So what he's saying here is that during that entire time, 18 months when they're out there saving people's lives, no mandatory testing there, not a thing. Didn't you have to worry about that? Indeed, at no time through the effective date of this order did anybody require Naperville or EMS to engage in COVID testing. Never happened. So why are they having to do it now? If they survive the entire pandemic, why now? Interesting. On September 3rd, Governor Pritzker issued that order. Healthcare workers include anybody who's employed by a healthcare facility. The executive order is a continuation of a state emergency declared by the governor. The governor said that he can exercise and extend those periods of the order for 30 days. Several decisions have come out and said that, yeah, he kind of can continue to extend those. Now, all of this is going to be challenged in court, right? The governor extended some of these orders. It goes into more detail about what some of the limitations on those orders are. But I want to show you some of the arguments that are being made from a constitutional perspective. And let's take a quick look at how some of this works. So you'll notice here, as the Supreme Court has found elsewhere, that there are guarantees of what? Due process here. Their roots come from the Magna Carta. There are procedural safeguards against executive usurpation and tyranny. In Washington, the court found that there was a significant liberty interest about being forced to be injected with medicine. And so you'll notice language like this. In this case, the mandate at issue is, quote, not narrowly tailored to forwarding a compelling government interest. Very key sentence here. This one also, vaccinating people is not a compelling government interest. What are they talking about? What are these fundamental rights that they're talking about? Well, I pulled a couple of constitutional provisions here, and I want to show you some of them. Let's take a quick look at this chart that I pulled off of Google Images, which looks pretty good to me. We're talking about things like due process and equal protection. So this regulation, if there's a new regulation that impacts everyone, we're going to talk about due process, right? Everybody who's charged with a crime has a right to counsel. Everybody who's charged with a crime has a right to silence. Everybody has the right to be free from government intrusions through the process of finding probable cause before issuing a search warrant. Affects everybody. But what happens when there are some laws that might impact certain people versus other people? Then we got to talk about not just due process, but equal protection. So a regulation affects a certain person or class of people. So you might say that, well, it might impact race, right? Obviously, those things are going to trigger some higher constitutional scrutiny. We also have things like national origin. Where'd you come from? How about gender? Those are considered to be a quasi-suspect class. We also have some classes or some delineations that are not fundamental rights at all. And so you have to sort of analyze where you're at on this chart. When we talk about due process then, what you're seeing here is a fundamental right being involved, specifically this one, privacy. Oh, it's a big one. And then if you are going to have a fundamental right that is being jeopardized, we have to talk about what test to use. You can see rational basis test and the strict scrutiny test and the intermediate scrutiny test. So what we're talking about here, to synthesize this whole chart, if you are somebody who has a legitimate, protected governmental a protected right, could be a fundamental right, or if you're being asked to segregate yourself into one class versus another class, it might implicate due process problems or equal protection problems. And so when we're going to be talking about, let's say, taking somebody's speech away from them or limiting their ability to do certain things that are protected under the Bill of Rights, we're implicating fundamental rights. For example, a person's ability to speak, free speech. It's a fundamental right. It's the First Amendment. And so if you take that away, we got to ask ourselves, what test do we apply to that? Is it going to be a rational basis test where basically anything that is rationally related to the government's interest, it means it's okay? Or because it's a fundamental right, are we going to elevate it from the rational basis test up into an intermediate scrutiny or a strict scrutiny test? And what we're talking about when we're talking about privacy is sort of what category is this court going to apply for some of these tests here? And so in this lawsuit, what we're going to see is he's saying this specifically. The mandate is not a compelling government interest, and it's not being narrowly tailored, and it is about the fundamental rights. We're talking about all those different issues here. So what that means is they're sort of alleging here that the government has to use the strictest standard before they're going to take your rights away. They got to find a really, really solid justification in order to do that. And so when we take a look at this chart, it's going to tell us that strict scrutiny means that the government, before they take your rights away, it has to be absolutely necessary in order for them to do that. It has to be a compelling reason, and it must meet the actual purpose. And you have to go through this analysis called the least restrictive alternative. And the burden is on the government. The government, in other words, has to meet all of these different standards. If you are somebody like John and the firefighters, think that the vaccine requirement is a fundamental violation of some fundamental liberties, versus the government, which might just say, oh no, it just has to meet this test, that it just has to be rationally related, that it just has to be legitimate. It can really be for any purpose whatsoever, and you don't need to make it the least restrictive at all. All you need to do is just so that, no, the government kind of needs that. The government kind of thinks that it's a good idea to have vaccine mandates. That's it. It's not imposing on your fundamental liberties, and so the government can do whatever it wants. Versus somebody who says, oh no, the government now is really infringing on something very, very important. And so they have to go through a very strict standard in order to take that right away. All right. So that was like, the horrible explanation of constitutional law in about 4 minutes, but it is what's happening in this lawsuit. And so you can see here, they're talking about this, saying the government is not narrowly tailoring this at all. There is no compelling government interest here. They haven't been doing it for months. Why are they doing it now? Presently, they say that COVID-19 cases are on the wane there. There was no time or over the last 9 months when vaccines have been available where a mandate was put in place. Therefore, it's evident, they say, that the weekly testing requirement is not narrowly tailored to forward the interest of preserving life and the health of citizens. It's punitive. It's taken against those who are asserting their fundamental rights. Which is exactly right. It feels very punitive to me. Let's take a look here at some of the other allegations. Due process. If defendants are not enjoined from putting the mandate into effect, their fundamental rights will be violated. Yes, their right to privacy. Due process, right there. We're saying here that the regulation affects everybody. It does involve fundamental rights like the right to privacy, and therefore it follows this path, the strict scrutiny test. The test, is the law necessary to achieve a compelling government interest? What is the compelling government interest? To save lives? Yeah, sure. Is this necessary to do that? Maybe, arguably. Is it the least restrictive means in order to save those lives that the government is intending to save? Probably not, right? Because there are other fundamental rights that you have to consider. And so there are other things that you can do to also reach that goal. Now, they're going to say that it's the testing requirement that is that escape hatch, but they don't account for natural immunity. They don't account for religious exemptions as far as I can tell. And so is it narrowly tailored in order to achieve that objective? I don't think so. Let's see what the other analysis here is. We have another count, equal protection. So let's go back and take a look at that. Equal protection, we're down here. It affects certain individuals. We can ask ourselves, what class does this fall into, right? Are the firefighters in a suspect class or a quasi-suspect class? Or are they not being discriminated against at all? I don't know. The courts are going to have to determine that. What status, what box here are they in? And then if it is a suspect class, they're being singled out for some particular reason, then they're going to be considered to have to use a strict scrutiny test, versus if they're a quasi-suspect class, it would be intermediate. And if it's not a suspect class, the rational basis test. I actually candidly think that the equal protection argument is probably less likely to be successful. I think the due process claims on all of these are a lot more substantive. Now, that being said, let's read this. It says that as a result of the executive order, plaintiffs are being treated differently from employees who are willing to disclose their vaccination status arbitrarily, and they're singled out for disparate treatment. So that's where you may be able to get that back into a quasi-suspect class, because now you're seeing sort of discrimination within the ranks, right? One set of employees are being treated inappropriately. Why? Because they're exercising their right to privacy, which is a fundamental right, but that might be more of a due process argument. But I do see equal protection arguments there now. I sort of walk that back a little bit. Count 3, they're asking for declaratory judgment. They want the courts to come out here and say that all of this stuff is problematic. that there's no factual basis, it's woefully inadequate, and so on and so forth. The final part of the lawsuit is here. They're asking the honorable court to say that Illinois and Naperville violated the constitutional rights of plaintiffs, finding that the executive order is therefore null and void, finding that the plaintiffs have a fundamental right to their bodily autonomy. We're going to see what this looks like. This is going to be hashed out in courts all across the country right here. Ordering defendants are enjoined from putting these vaccine mandates in place, ordering that plaintiffs be compensated to the extent allowable under the law for their damages, and of course, associated costs and attorney's fees for bringing the lawsuit. Hats off to Jonathan Lubin out there, Jonathan at LubinLegal.com, doing very good work, bringing a good fight in federal district court. Not a lot of lawyers are competent or capable of doing that, so hats off to you, sir. And also, if you want to support this, I don't typically do this on the show, but John's been around our community for a long time. I believe in what they're doing. If you want to support them, there was a fund that was set up over at Give, Send, Go. The link is down here, givesendgo.com/G28YN. Super easy. Type that into a browser. You can go and support. I know that I will be making a contribution here shortly. So that is over from John Halgren from our very own locals community. Lots of thoughts and prayers go out to John and all of the firefighters who are fighting the good fight. Can't imagine how stressful it is, but my thoughts and prayers go out to you, and I know I speak on behalf of many, many people who are part of our community for taking a stand. So let's take a look at some questions over from watchingthewatchers.locals.com, see what we've got here queued up. We've got... All right, let's get down. Let's see what else. That was from Greg Marat. Here, we've got John's better 2/3. Heather says, John's on duty. We'll watch this tomorrow. We appreciate the support more than we can express. If we win, you win. Totally agree with that. Yeah, and Heather was also on one of our monthly local meetups, and so I got to meet both of them. And Heather, everything I just expressed, I want to also, communicate over to you. I can't imagine what you guys are going through, what your family's going through. It's a lot. So lots of love going your direction. Monster One says that new pill that they're developing is basically the same thing as a horse-based drug. That was on the last Gavin Newsom section. We have another one here from It's Ed says, hey, John, right across Route 59, just outside of Naperville. I'll be enjoying the Oktoberfest tonight, though. I hear it's going to be great. Keep up the good fight, brother. Hope NFD doesn't vote for Pritzker the next go-round. Let's get that joke out of Illinois. I don't understand that joke. It must be an Illinois insider joke. But look at this community. Just bringing people together. Isn't that beautiful? Soul Viking is here, says, supporting John is supporting freedom and being free from oppression. Godspeed, John. That's another one from Soul Viking in the house. Let's see. Thunder 7 says, mandated vaccines are unconstitutional. Better to lose your job and then sue for wrongful termination. You may lose the battle, but you'll win the war. Thousands have already been fired for not complying, but they have the law on their side. Justice may not be immediate, but the Naperville Firefighters will win in the end. The Constitution tops every mandate. Love that, Thunder 7. Thanks for chiming in and throwing some love their direction. No question on that one. Let's see here. Jeremy Matrita says, 2 comments. Rob, they can't fire people that have the ability to put those fires out quickly. Oh, I see what you did there, Jeremy. So Jeremy's making the point that if they come in and say you're fired, well, they're firefighters. They just go, oh, yeah, no problem. Out. Next problem you have for us. Very clever, Jeremy. Also, when the government is of, for, and by the people, therefore the government cannot mandate anything the people did not ask for. If people are forced to take something that doesn't guarantee anyone protecting them, what is the point? Compliance. I think that's really what it's mostly about. Compliance and sort of a false sense of security that makes people feel good. Let's see. We've got Captain Jim says, Rob, as I sit here and listen to you break down these legal concepts, I can't help but think that you owe those women in cultures ultra feminists. That's true. That's right. Bigley says, you say they berated you for daring to be a white heterosexual male in the 21st century. Well, look where that landed you. You're now a lawyer, and who on earth likes lawyers? But you run your own law firm, and throughout your time in practice, you've helped thousands of good people. You owe the feminists, man. It's a good point. Jim, I probably wouldn't be here if it were not for that class and berating me into reminding me what a useless piece of garbage I am. I'm very fortunate that I now know that, so that I've been able to blossom into I don't think anything's. I'm a disgusting lawyer, like you said. Nobody likes me anyways. So I think that, it's hard to say, right? I have helped people. I hope so. We built a law firm. My team. We've done a lot of good work in this world, but I'm still a lawyer and I'm still white. So even though we've had some successes, I've got a lot of I owe a lot. I should probably go and lash myself for being so stinking white. It's the worst thing in the world. And male. And Catholic. Ugh. It's like the worst. Terrible, terrible person. Thanks for the reminder, John. I'll go, immolate myself later. Geomancy Game says, we always need to support each other in the community. I will absolutely give a donation. Thank you for continuing to support fellow members. Of course, Geomancy. That's what it's all about. It's all about community. And we had another super chat that came in from Alex Bogey, says, got a link from a buddy that SCOTUS struck down the Fed requirement. How to tell those whose heart is in the right place to better filter information. That SCOTUS struck down the Fed requirement. Is that a thing? Did that happen? Where would that link be? Let me see if there's any news on the usual places about that. Not anything that I'm seeing. I don't know where you got that source from. Typically you'll see a lot of stuff like on SCOTUS blog. So let's pull that up. So let's see what the SCOTUS blog looks like. So SCOTUS blog is usually pretty up to speed on these things. Kavanaugh tests positive for COVID-19, fully vaccinated, has no symptoms. Term opener, they're going to hear Mississippi, that they're tearing down Tennessee's groundwater. We've got Sotomayor turns down the plea to block the vaccine mandate. The House is voting. So I don't see anything there. So, I'm not sure. It might have been an old link, but just come to this show there, Alex. Just come to this show. We'll make sure we get all the details sorted out. But I did not see that they struck down the Fed requirement. But look, maybe it's not out here. Maybe it's literally breaking, and maybe you're educating us about this. But it is. It's hard, and this is going to be the same challenge. Remember, if you've been with this channel for some time, and I think, Alex, that you have, that we spent a lot of time going through all of the election litigation. And remember that? I mean, there was like 50, 60 different lawsuits that we were sort of keeping tabs on. And then what you saw was a lot of them got dismissed. Some of them brought up good arguments. Some of them brought up bad arguments. We covered a lot of them. But it was really like chaos. There was Nevada and Pennsylvania and Georgia, lawsuits in Arizona, audits everywhere. Everybody's going haywire. We're going to see a lot of that now for the foreseeable future in all sorts of different issues, because the whole legal system is changing rapidly. I mean, you were seeing lawyers just getting really ready to start filing lawsuits if the Supreme Court didn't step in and push back against the CDC. They did. And so a lot of lawyers were really ready to go on this eviction stuff, and they didn't. You're going to see the same thing once these OSHA requirements come down, once people start getting fired, once people have standing, once they can come and actually file complaints, they will. And we're going to have to just keep poking around and figuring it out until the Supreme Court settles it for us. But if my point is it's going to be messy. So if you're asking about how to filter out information, it's sort of a cat and mouse game. You just kind of got to stay on top of it. But certainly check in with us, because we do our best to stay on top of it. Let's see. Any other questions on this one? Yes, Peely Wally is here. Says, Rob, nice to see you again. Been missing your live streams of late, but catching them the next day. On a day when vaccine passports came into use in Scotland, nothing surprises me anymore. COVID will be a never-ending story of fear or control over here in Scotland. The nightclub and adult entertainment industry took the government to court, challenging the passports, but it was thrown out in a flash. Judges obviously don't want to step on toes. Send prayers. That's from Peely Wally. Good to see you, Peely Wally, over in Scotland. One more was from Vienticus Prime. Says, all these divisions being created, there's so many ways that people are getting pitted against each other, including situations like this. I don't know if you're old enough to remember, Rob, but we used to say, united we stand, divided we fall. Look at our people. Yeah, we have two tiers of people now in this country. The vaxxed, the unvaxxed. You've got, anybody who is sort of now a libertarian or challenging the government or being bundled into extremism now. So, yeah, not particularly ideal, but I do remember that. Feels like a different country in many ways. Those were great questions over from watchingthewatchers.locals.com. I appreciate all of your thoughts and support there. All right. And so we've got one more segment. It's going to be super casual, super easy. Let's just jump into it. It's been about a year since we started going live every day on this show. We started in mid-September of 2020. This channel's been around a lot longer than that, but we were previously, this was basically a legal channel where I would make videos about DUI cases and how to fight a radar speeding ticket and what blood vial testing looked like. And I had whiteboards and I would just draw some stuff on there and I'd make a bunch of videos. I had some really outrageous colored shirts and all sorts of stuff. And I didn't really have any idea what I was doing. And I still really don't have any idea what I'm doing here. I went to law school. We've got a law firm in Scottsdale. And so I've been sort of, trying to find my footing here on YouTube and with, communicating with everybody and sort of building a show that people want to tune into and they enjoy. And so I was thinking that because it's been just over a year, that it's a good time to do some reflection on what this show has been, where we've come from, where we're going, what some of our numbers look like, what some of the directions looks like, because I think it's important for you to know that. You sort of understand what is going on in my head and what I'm seeing on my end, because we're all having these conversations together. So I went back and I looked at some of our early videos. And so you'll notice that if this is from our YouTube, sort of the back end of YouTube, down here you can see I had a show on September 9th, 2020, September 16th, 2020, and then right after Ruth Bader Ginsburg died, you can see here we were talking about Rittenhouse and Floyd and Arbery and Taylor. Back in right in September, about September 21st, Ruth Bader Ginsburg died. And you'll notice then I had shows every day, 21, 22, September 23, 24, 25, 26, 28, 29, 30. And we've been doing our very best to be as consistent. I woke up and I said, listen, something big happened in the legal space. And so we've just got to, we got to talk about it, right? There's too much to talk about. And we've got a window opening. And I talk about that sometimes on this show. Sometimes windows open, sometimes windows close. And in this case, we had a sort of window open. Ruth Bader Ginsburg died. The elections were coming up. Donald Trump was, facing off against Joe Biden. And so there was so much to talk about. We had legal news, Kyle Rittenhouse, George Floyd, all of these different things were going on. So we decided to go live every day. I made that commitment. I've done my very best to adhere to that. And I get really agitated when I get sick, and I get frustrated when I can't actually do the show on a particular day because I'm in court or whatever it is. So that was kind of the iteration. And you can see that a lot has changed. We've had, moderators come and go. We've had people who are on our team come and go. The thumbnails have changed. The background has changed many, many times. And so I just wanted to just pause and reflect. We've had some very amazing successes. We've got right now, when I go on to my back end, you'll see that we've got 120,662 subscribers. But you'll also notice that our viewers are way down. Our views have gone down dramatically, and we've actually lost subscribers this month. And so I started to take a look at this. I was going, oh my goodness, what's going on here? This is a little bit strange. Why? Why are we actually losing subscribers? The point of this show, of course, is to continue to grow and build a community and build an audience and just share these ideas and continue to expand these things and have really meaningful, entertaining, fun times with everybody, and we have some good conversations, learn a couple things or two. But it is still something where things are changing a little bit. Things are dynamic. Now, a couple big things that I wanted to share with you that are videos. Of course, we have fewer uploads that are changing a little bit. So videos published this month were only 18. And previously on prior months, we were uploading many, many more videos. Why? Oh, well, because we moved things off of a different channel. We moved the clips to a different clips channel. And of course, the audience here on this channel is way bigger than over there. So maybe that had something to do with it. But we also lost subscribers. I mean, literally lost 55 subscribers. Whereas previously in months, we would get anywhere from 2.1 thousand new subs to 6.9 thousand new subs. So a major, major shift. In September, we're not growing. Well, that's weird. I wonder what could be going on. And if you look around at some other metrics, well, maybe you'll see. We can take a look here. Watch time from subscribers the watch time is basically only from subscribers. About 84% of the people are already subscribed, and about 15% of the people are not subscribed. Now, if you look at other people's channels, what you'll see here is that these numbers typically are a little bit more like this. So if you are a YouTuber, if you're watching this, then what you'll see is that this number is like a little bit higher, 30, 40% are not subscribed. What that means is that YouTube is showing your content to more people so that you can get more engagement. And YouTube has already, communicated that they they will demote certain content. So what does this mean? Well, I look at these numbers and I think a lot about it, and I'm trying to sort of gauge, what am I doing here? Am I blowing this? Am I screwing something up? Have I done something that has alienated a bunch of people? Is this a number of different things? What are some explanations for this? So I've given it some thoughts. I always like to reflect on my performance, whether it's after a trial, whether it's after a relationship with somebody, whether it's after I got sick with something. I like to just go, how did I do there? And so I have some thoughts on this. Number one, the show could be diminishing in quality. Well, that's absolutely possible. I take full acknowledgement of that. This thing could be going off the rails to some degree. Could be too rushed. I could be too negative. I could be too political. Many people might say I've gotten away from the core of the show, which really was focused on, police accountability. That's absolutely true. All of those things are true. Maybe that's why this thing is sort of going off the rails a little bit. Could also be that the show format is not right. So I've gotten some feedback from some other YouTubers that tell me that YouTube is just not really that good for live streaming. It's really better for recorded shows, and that you should do less live streams, which of course I'm intending to do. So we're going to continue to do the live stream here, right? This is our bread and butter. But, talking about moving stuff over to Twitch and things like that, which are, not likely to happen. But it's just a thought that maybe the format is just not right, because Twitch is for live streaming. YouTube is for sort of, higher produced videos where you do a deep dive on one particular topic. You upload it, and it just does better with the search algorithms than you would with the live streams. It also could be just simple as this. The political news is slow. Right? Last year, there was a lot of very interesting things going on. We had an election. Now, some of the political stuff is just tired. Nobody really wants to talk about it. But it could be just a standard lull. Like, you're not going to have the same numbers in a post-election year that you would have in a pre-election year. Also, number 4, I've just gone absolutely crazy. I've gone off the deep end. Sometimes I feel like that, right? Sometimes I'm like, am I the only one who cares about any of these topics? I know that's not the case, because we have a tremendous community here. I'm not trying to sort of say that I'm disappointed with anything. I'm incredibly grateful for what we have. I'm just sort of watching and making sure that we're not going down. Like, people are unsubscribing. Why is that? Curious. So it could be possible that I've just lost it, right? I'm a lunatic anti-vaxxer. I'm somebody who is just outside of the norm. I believe in freedom and liberty, and those are not that popular in this country anymore. A lot of people are not really interested in that. They want to go with the herd. They want to be safe. They want to be protected, and they want to be a part of the in-group. They want to be a part of a collective. I don't want to be part of that standard collective. Maybe I've just lost it. I acknowledge that might actually be a thing. We also have that YouTube might be tipping the scales a little bit. Right? We had a strike, if you recall. I've got one strike, and then in fact they gave us another strike when I talked about the Joe Rogan stuff, and then they gave us a suspension. I was not allowed to record here for 7 days. It went on Twitter, and there was a major sort of response to that. It was the biggest tweet I've ever had, because people were outraged, because what was happening was there was actual media misinformation about what Joe Rogan did, and they were spreading that all over the place. Me calling out their misinformation. He didn't take horse dewormer. He took regular prescribed drugs, and when I was talking about that, YouTube said I was the misinformation, even though Anderson Cooper had a chyron there that said it was horse dewormer. So once that happened, I noticed that some of our views and things went down, and it could be that YouTube is now just sort of, checking our subscribers, making modifications to that. Maybe as many people just didn't, weren't actual legitimate subs, and so YouTube is cleaning the sub list. I don't know. It could be that YouTube is just actively demoting the content, right? On this show, we talk a lot about very borderline gray topics. We talk about vaccine mandates. We talk a lot about the COVID mandates in general, which are just disfavored topics. And YouTube says that specifically. They say that they'll amplify what they call the more credible news sources, and they'll demote some of the borderline content. And they have this actually written in blog posts. And so, we talk here about January 6th. We talk here about the election. We talk here about a lot of different things that are all like basically every single one of YouTube policies that we have, that they have, that you have to abide by. I'm like, yeah, we talk about that. We talk about that. We talk about that and that. And so it is something where, I recognize fully that a lot of what we talk about is in that gray area, and YouTube may legitimately on record may be suppressing us, but I just can't prove that. But it is a possibility. And so listen, I'm going through all of these different topics, and I know that many of you just don't, like, it's your channel, I don't care. Can you just get back to the, to the nuts and bolts of what's going on in the news? But it is part of the story, because what I am trying to do is wrap my head around, what are we trying to accomplish here? Right? I step back from this and I ask myself, what am I trying to build? What's the end goal here? What do I want? What do I think this can be? What can we build together? A lot of very, sort of existential questions that I ask myself. Is this something where I just want, 3 million subscribers? If I want 3 million subscribers, why? Is it a vanity metric? What's the end goal? Do I want to just make a bunch of money? Not really. It doesn't really motivate me the way that it does some other people. Some people wake up every day like, I just got to get more so that I can just, invest more so that I can provide for this and whatever. It just doesn't do much for me. Now, I like what money can do in terms of expanding a mission. It gives you more tools to go out there and produce better content and to do more things and to fly new places and to invite people in and to build out new things and all of that. That's what excites me, but it's not about the money. It's about because we can do something else. And so I start to ask what is it? What do you want out of this thing? With our law firm, it's always been very clear. We want to help as many people as possible navigate through the justice system without having their lives wrecked. And we've built our business around that, and we've defined our values: safety, clarity, and hope. This is what we want to provide to people: safety, clarity, and hope to everybody. And if we can't help them, maybe I can make a video about it, or they can buy a book, or they can come into our office, we'll give them a book. We'll give them as anything that we can to help people. So that is what happened with the law firm. And so I'm having the same conversation with the show. Okay, what are we going to do here? It's about accountability. It's about transparency. It's about justice. It's about liberty, and it's about freedom. And it's about standing up against the status quo, against everybody else who wants to come out here and take things away from the rest of society. It's about fighting the bullies. And so I start to think about this. And I was going back and I was analyzing this, and I was thinking, why do I feel sort of badly about having lower subscribers or lower view counts? Yes, some of that might be because we just moved things over from a clips channel. Yes, it might be because YouTube is sort of purging our subscriber rolls. It could be all of these different things. But why do I care about it in the first place? Why am I going, why we lost subscribers? Why does that kind of sting a little bit to some degree? And so I was thinking back to a book that I read many years ago, and I started to read it again, and I'm recognizing that when I read it many years ago, that it wasn't the right time for me to read it. It didn't land because I was in a different place in my life. And so I'm rereading it right now, and I want to share this clip with you. I want to read a little bit of this book. It's called A New Earth: Awaken to Your Life's Purpose. It's written here by Eckhart Tolle, #1 New York Times bestseller, 10th anniversary edition, new preface by the author, all that stuff. Now, I'm not going to read much here, but there is a couple paragraphs that I think are very, very important. And it helped me to synthesize how I'm thinking about all of this. Number one, we have the collective ego. Okay, the collective ego here. Let's talk about this. How hard it is to live with yourself. Okay, this is a very important concept. We're talking about the ego, living with yourself. It's a hard thing to do. That voice in your head is complicated. One of the ways in which the ego attempts to escape the unsatisfactoriness of personal selfhood is to enlarge and strengthen its sense of self by identifying with a group. Okay? Ego wants to identify with a group, a nation, a political party, corporation, institution, sects, clubs, gangs, football teams, or this could even be COVIDs, the COVID masks versus the unmasks, the COVID vaxxed versus the unvaxxed. We're living in a world like this right now where everybody is sort of connecting with a collective ego. It's difficult to live in yourself. It's difficult to be a person by yourself and live with your thoughts in your own mind. So you join a collective ego, you join a nation, you join a political party, you join a corporation, you join an institution, you join a football team. You become a pro-vaxxer versus an anti-vaxxer. You tell people that you can't come to my house anymore unless you're part of this collective group. Happening all over the place. In some cases, the personal ego seems to dissolve completely as someone dedicates his or her life to working selflessly for the greater good of the collective without demanding rewards or recognition or aggrandizement. We see that a lot happening here. What a relief to be freed of the dreadful burden of your personal self. The members of the collective feel happy and they feel fulfilled no matter how hard they work or how many sacrifices they make. They appear to have gone beyond ego. The question is, have they become truly free? Or has the ego simply shifted from the personal to the collective? You might analogize this with what we're seeing in the world. Okay, a lot of people out there who really might be struggling with some inner self-worth or some personal ego issues, maybe say that, I'm not real happy with the life that I've created for myself, but now I can become a part of the collective. Now I can be a part of somebody who is fighting for grandma and fighting for life and fighting for the children and fighting for safety and saving American lives. And they're going to make their entire identity about that because they have joined this collective in order to come and join a collective ego. Same thing is happening here. A collective ego now manifests the same characteristics as the personal ego, such as the need for conflict and enemies, the need for more, the need to be right against others who are wrong, and so on. Sooner or later, the collective is going to come into conflict with other collectives because it unconsciously seeks conflict and it needs opposition to define its boundary and thus its identity. Got to fight over the masks. You got to fight over the vaccines. You have to be right against the others who are wrong. And you have to define your boundaries and therefore your identity. Its members will then experience the suffering that inevitably comes in the wake of any ego-motivated action. At that point, they may wake up and realize that their collective has a strong element of insanity. Now, it can be painful at first to suddenly wake up and realize that the collective you identified with and worked is actually insane. Some people at that point become cynical or bitter and henceforth deny all values, all worth. This means that they quickly adopted another belief system when the previous one was recognized as illusory and therefore collapsed. They didn't face the death of their ego, but they ran and reincarnated a new one in the collective. So we see this happening all around us. A lot of people are still stuck. They've made a shift from a personal ego to a collective ego. We're going to finish one more slide. A collective ego is usually more unconscious than the individuals that make up that ego. Okay, so everybody is sort of giving up a certain portion of their consciousness to join this collective ego. So for example, crowds, which are temporary collective egoic entities, they're capable of committing atrocities that any individual from the crowd would not be. Nations not infrequently engage in behavior and would be immediately recognizable as psychopathic in an individual. Now, this is where I think it all comes together. As the new consciousness emerges, some people will feel called upon to form groups that reflect the enlightened consciousness. These groups will not be collective egos. The individuals who make up these groups will have no need to define their identity through them. They no longer look to any form to define who they are. Even if the members that make up those groups are not totally free of ego yet, there will be enough awareness in them to recognize the ego in themselves or in others as soon as it appears. However, constant alertness is required since the ego will try to take over and reassert itself in any way that it can, dissolving the human ego by bringing it into the light of awareness. This will be one of the main purposes of these groups, whether they be enlightened businesses, charitable organizations, schools, or communities of people living together, or let's say in our case, communicating together. Enlightened collectives will fulfill an important function in the arising of the new consciousness. Just as the egoic collectives pull you into unconsciousness and suffering, the enlightened collective can be a vortex for consciousness that will accelerate the planetary shift. That was from Eckhart Tolle. And when I was reading that passage about this enlightened consciousness, about people who don't identify themselves with any kind of one, group, with people who say, I want to think freely, with people who say, I want to associate freely. I like to debate a bunch of different ideas. I like to think a bunch of different ways. That's what really resonated with me. That's what I really think that we're building in this community, in this show, over on Locals, over on Rumble, over everywhere that we communicate. And that's that's kind of what I think matters, really. More than subscribers, more than watch time, more than view time. It's about continuing that underlying mission. It's about sort of having conversations, growing together in a way where there's a little bit more openness, a little bit more awareness, a little bit more freedom, a lot less insanity out there in the world. And so I'm not really I'm not trying to come off as being complaining about any of this stuff. I think I'm incredibly blessed to be able to do this every day and be able to communicate with everybody here. But it is something that I think really resonated. And I just wanted to end with thank you for helping me to sort of flesh through all of this and to be a part of this group, because I really, truly believe that there is an enlightened collective that is being built and has virtually nothing to do with me other than to have a place to talk every day. But it's a group that is being built, and I'm just so grateful for it. We have a tremendous amount of people who are going to be joining us tomorrow for a monthly locals meetup. And so when I look at the numbers or the metrics or the growth or any of those different permutations, it all becomes noise to the secondary mission, which is about learning. It's about growing. It's about fighting against the bullies. It's about fighting for accountability, justice, and transparency. And so with that, I would love to hear your thoughts on any of this. I know it's a little bit out there, a little bit woo-woo, but I think it's pretty important that we talk about some of that. Now, I'm open to any suggestions. I'm open to any criticism, any feedback. Hey, Rob, do this. This is stupid. I don't like how you're talking about this. Any other thoughts about the show? About how to improve it. I'm always open to improvements. I'm always open for constructive criticism or non-constructive criticism if you'd like. And so let's take a look at some of the questions over from watchingthewatchers.locals.com. And I know we also have some super chats that came in. So let's take a note here. Yeah, Christopher Walk, this is a great suggestion. This might be the whole problem here, is needs more cowbell. That's from Christopher Walken. Yeah, I should have learned that a long time ago. We have Geomancy Game says my metrics, who's on YouTube, says my metrics have tanked last year. I was casually gaining subs. I have less than 1,500 on YouTube. It just suddenly stopped. I would go months without gaining a single sub. Branched out into Rumble. It's so discouraging. I feel like you have to start over. The only suggestion I'd throw your way is, have you thought about doing a bi-weekly Rumble only stream, sort of an exclusive to get more people over there? Also, come sub. I appreciate the shout outs every day. I'm eternally grateful to you. That's Geomancy Games. Subscribe on YouTube. Thank you for that, Geomancy. Yeah, and it might just be that YouTube is sort of, continues to demote different channels, depending on what you're talking about. But it is interesting to see how sort of YouTube works on the back end and get some good data. Mustang Jeff says, I've been regularly watching your show since March this year. Best show ever. Thanks for what you do, and please keep on keeping on. Thank you, Mustang Jeff, and for allowing me to communicate some of that. Jeremy Matrita says, Rob, is it possible if a YouTube user gets banned, YouTube will count it as an unsubscribe? Also, if a user deletes their account, would that count as an unsubscribe? Yeah, it would. And so maybe the reduction in subscribers is simply due to the fact that YouTube sort of got their eyes on our channel after we got a strike, suspended, and a reinstatement, and so they're purging some of the list. That does happen, right? There are a lot of bot accounts and things like that, so it may just be as simple as that. We also have the Anticus Prime says, you could always challenge Logan Paul to a fight. I used to do mixed martial arts. I might be interested in that. Let's see, we have another one from Sir Kexalot. Says, Rob, you angered the vaccine gods. Repent, heathen, repent, which is also true. I have to self-immolate later. Rob, I'm not gas, says, Rob, if you want millions of views, you just have to abandon all integrity, thought, introspection, spout nonsense like Legal Eagle. The quality is there. You're just playing for the disfavored side. Very astute observation from I'm Not Gas. Thanks for the support, I'm Not Gas. We have another one from Jeremy says, also, don't forget the metrics from the other platforms. Don't be too hard on yourself. Your show has consistently improved in quality over the many months I've been watching. You have added value with the locals community as well. Thank you for that, Jeremy. I appreciate it. I think that I'm getting a little bit more, skilled at what we talk about, but I don't know. We have another one. Thunder7 says, I'll be honest, Rob, you're talking too much about the jabs. I learned so much about legal protocols because of your excellent legal analysis with the past cases. You don't talk about legal cases anymore, like Chauvin, Britney Spears' lawyer won a big victory, not a peep from you about it. Too much vaccine talk, not enough about legal cases. You might have lost subscribers who support Biden, but that's too bad, so sad. Don't change your political stripes to make Dems happy. You speak the truth, and they don't like that. Yeah, I understand. That's a great comment, Thunder7. I get that totally. I really have been talking about the vaccines basically every day, and really about COVID every day, because it's been driving me freaking nuts. I really can't get excited about Britney Spears and her case. I mean, congratulations. It's great. All good stuff. but I'm just not that interested in that particular case. If there's, but I take your point well. I mean, I really do. Thank you for that. I think you're onto something with that. That's why sort of at the top, it was sort of Rob has gone off the rails. So I may consider that. I may want to segment some more of the vaccines, of the COVID stuff off, because it's exhausting. I don't disagree with you on that. It's a great comment. Thank you for that. That was from Thunder 7. Very astute. We have, maybe it's more and more people leaving YouTube because of their policies. This person says their name is not a YouTube subscriber. That could be true too. We have I'm Not Gas says, also, since YouTube will not be pushing your channel to other viewers, I think the only way you can have a decent growth is to do more guest spots and collabs with other large YouTubers, thereby increasing your exposure. That's a good point too. And there are a lot of amazing people that I would like to talk to, and I want to do more of that. Right now, I've been sort of dealing with some bandwidth issues from my production side, but it is something that I would love to talk to, because they're, I've done a couple with Nick Rekieta, love that guy. Viva and Barnes, love those guys, right? They're talking my language, and so I think that we could do more streams and more collabs. I just haven't really had the bandwidth to do that. Another comment says many people do not feel comfortable with YouTube, which is probably also accurate. A couple other questions from Geomancy says, when you talk about your goals on YouTube, I've always said my goal on YouTube was to eventually provide myself and my son a living. I completely disabled because of my cancer. My son has Asperger's. His dream is to become a YouTube star. While it seems impossible, I want to show him if you continue to put in work, your dreams can come true. It's been a complete struggle to break out the past 5 years of YouTube. I've nearly given up several times. I love making videos. I just want to continue to share them with people. Perhaps I should cause some public beef with you so drama plays well. But seriously, a collab? We can do a collab. I mean, I don't do much gaming, Geomancy games, but so I don't know. I'd have to learn more about what you want to talk about. But I'd love to support you, right? And I try to every day. Geomancy Games on YouTube. Go subscribe. But certainly, I want to make it productive for the audience. Obviously, sometimes I feel like collabs are just for the sake of collabs. It's like people, we just talk and stream, and maybe I just have to be more comfortable with that. I don't know. But yes, we'll connect, Geomancy. I'm Not Gas says, another common suggestion by many is to have an after show one day a week where you stream exclusively on non-YouTube platforms to talk more verboten topics. Yeah, and that's going to happen over on Locals for sure. And so I'll probably open those up to the public, but definitely. We have, let's see, Jeremy says, also go back and listen to a segment from Rush. He talks about not listening to anyone with regards to your show. People watch you because they want to hear your take on the issues. The more you try to be more like yourself, the less you will be. You are an incredibly driven, talented, intelligent guy. Keep the drive, stay the course, whatever the course may be. Well, thank you, Jeremy. And Rush, candidly, was a huge inspiration to me growing up. When I was a boy, I listened to him. My mom had him on all the time. I listened to him. I was thinking about him the other day. I sort of miss his take on the world. And, I'm not going anywhere. Nothing's going to change here probably, but I am trying to gauge some feedback. And I think like Thunder 7's comment about going vax crazy is probably pertinent. So thank you, Jeremy. I appreciate you've always been very loving and supportive. So thanks for being here. Peely Wally says, I discovered your channel during the U.S. election, been with you ever since, as much as I can, which is pretty much often. I would say political stories are currently not as grand, and COVID is a no-go zone for critical thinking and speaking on YouTube. I don't believe YouTube has the pull it did. Many streamers are moving from this site because of their wokeness and the clampdown on free speech. It will be swings and roundabouts, though. You're just an impeachment away from gaining more traction again. I still believe your channel to be very successful compared to the others in the field, Rob. I agree with you, Peely. And if I have come off as complaining in any way, I apologize for that. I mean, I really am so grateful. We've had a tremendous amount of growth in this last year, and none of that could happen without you, of course, being here and communicating and sharing the show. But it is something, I always like to, to analyze things. I'm probably an overthinker in many ways, but that's just my nature. That's just how it is. It's Ed says, I'll be honest, I love watching the show, buddy. I know when the show airs and I have to actively search for your show around 5:30. Even though I'm subscribed to your channel, I don't get any notifications and you don't pop up on my feeds. I figured it was because of your stance on certain subjects like pro-freedom leaning. YouTube always blocks content like yours. I have to search for Viva Barnes, Facts Matter, Nate the Lawyer, just how it is with big tech. Yeah, it's a bummer, isn't it? Thanks, it's Ed. It's a great feedback. I appreciate it. Another one from Vientica says, well, I will say one thing that from my observations, a good part of your show are the interactions. You helped establish a community that you regularly interact with. I would say that's what ultimately attracts people to a place. I will point out, to be cautious of growing too large, communities are like physics. The scale tends to determine the set of rules you're working with. I think there's some truth to that. Yeah, and I'm not in a some sort of, mad dash sprint to get to a certain threshold, but I'm just watching and observing and analyzing. Let's see. We got Monster One says, Rob, you didn't lose subscribers. YouTube is punishing you for pushing back. It could be true. I don't know. Lord Nelson is not here. Says, okay, Lord Nelson, no public comment. Left me a private comment. I'll read that. Thanks, Lord Nelson. We have another one from Tweak says, do you mean the media is consciously creating division in order to profit from this? Kind of like this, maybe? Let's see what this one is. How to sell foot. Oh, yeah. I think I've seen that. I don't want to play that here, but it's a good one, Tweak. All right, let's see what else is coming in. A few more questions before we wrap up for this lovely Friday. We have Sweet Po Tay Toe says, I put both public and private comments for you on this forum. I think with the mandates are happening in some states and others, people are trying to save their money and make necessary moves. Getting rid of spending where you can have financial freedom to make the moves, every dollar counts. God bless you. I wouldn't internalize the subscriber loss. You have a lot of variables that come into play. Definitely not your personality. That's nice. That's very nice, Sweet Potato. The experience in the chat, the lack of the ability to send DMs to other members on locals, the cost, the heavy content every day can be intense, no question. The airtime might not be compatible. Also some good thoughts on that. Yeah. Could be all of those things. Thank you, Sweet Potato. And you're always here. I appreciate that also. Beth says, I love Eckhart Tolle. My husband has a CD of his a friend gave him. It's amazing. I can relate to reading a book when I wasn't ready. A friend of mine gave me the book Codependent No More by Melody Beattie. I was deeply offended at the idea that I was responsible at all for my difficulties. Sound familiar? Yes, it does. When I joined Overeaters Anonymous, I became aware of the book. Very much described me. I still read the big book. People come and go, Robert. The people here want to and will support you no matter what. Love you all. That's from Beth. That's amazing, Beth. Yeah, the big book, The 12 Steps. Changed my life. Recommend it, especially if you've got a problem with that stuff. Thank you, Beth. Sir Kexalot, Rob says, Rob, I think you're awesome. Thank you for your time. I think you're awesome too, Sir Kexalot. Really appreciate you being here. Greg Murat says, Rob, it's not you. This is the best channel on YouTube. Well, that's a really nice thing to say. This channel is probably facing the principle of diminishing marginal productivity. You're probably losing all the looky-loos from the Rittenhouse days. Most of your views are coming from 80% of the subscribers. That's ideal, I think. For me, the channel now has a stronger identity than the Rittenhouse days, I think. You are building it slowly. You are building it strongly. I think that's what matters in the long run. Look how awesome the community you have that you've built at Locals. Everyone there would go to war for you. Don't change anything. Keep doing what you're doing. Well, thank you, Greg. That's a really nice thing to say. It's really a nice thing to say. And so that's not what I was looking for in this segment, but I appreciate it. It's really nice of you to say that. I will take all of this to heart. We have Peely Wally says, Rob, as you know, I'm in Scotland. This is a place I can be and listen to good people giving thoughts on matters that are so important to life these days. I've jumped about political parties in Scotland from voting for Scottish freedom in 2014 to now just being against it because of Brexit. Don't have many places I can go and listen in your channel, even though about the U.S. touches home in the UK so much. And I'm very grateful that you're with us, Peely Wally. It's very nice to have people from afar. I hope you can join us tomorrow. I know it's probably really late for you though. Yeah. Somebody else says, don't do Tim Pool. If you're going to be doing collabs. I don't know what's going to, yeah. All right. Jake is from here. Jake from Oxford. Jake Sullivan from Oxford. He's the smartest person in the world. You know why? Because he went to Oxford. Let's see what he has to say. I'll come on your show for a day and teach you and learn you some optics. It's Jake Sullivan. Brilliant. Realtor Patty says, you don't need to tell everyone on YouTube you need to tell everyone on YouTube to hit the like button on every show. That makes YouTube share your channel. Hit that like button, folks. That is from, who's that from? That was from Realtor Patty. Good to see you, Realtor Patty. Thank you for the reminder. I guess I could plug things a little bit more. Let's see. It's Ed says, Rob, your show helps me look at things differently. I never looked at the legal system the way you explain it, especially when it comes to the presumption of innocence. Now I always look at it through that scope. Now I notice the hypocrisy of others when it fits their needs. I appreciate you, Rob. Soon I will delete my YouTube account, go to Rumble. Just don't want to support YouTube anymore, but I will still watch you on Rumble. So there you go. Maybe that's a more common thing. Thanks, it's Ed. Glad that you're here with us. We have The Real Villain says, you have a voice for radio and a face for TV, intelligent and a good sense of humor. Virgo overthink. It's been only 1 month. It's not a trend. Can't make too many conclusions yet. That's from the real villain. Keep going. It's absolutely right. And also, September was a terrible month. I couldn't talk. There may have been a lot of people that just left. They're like, do you hear that guy? Sounds like he's strangling a cat in his larynx. And so they just bailed out of there. That's probably a real possibility. Drearier Spider says, I hate to be the guy that can't offer you constructive feedback and only heaps praise, but I love your show exactly as it is. Of the breadth of the topic you cover, the depth you go into, you offer something unique in the political legal comments arena. Your audience interaction is great. I wish I could make the live show more often, but I have a blast and learn a lot anytime I tune in. I honestly believe the YouTube commies are fully or mostly to blame for the lackluster growth. Been with you ever since your Viva Barnes sidebar. That's from Drearier Spider. Yeah, and it's another good point there. I'm sure it's not just me, but we have another one from D-Rod says, I appreciate your take on vaccines. I would appreciate the legal side on the OSHA rules to be issued, legal understanding on what Biden is doing and how we can avoid it. Biden is pushing the mandates because he's deflecting from Biden's other failures. So discussing these mandates is important. Move the show. Yeah, we may just need to make that change sooner rather than later. Sweet Potato says, no to Viva and Barnes? Also fire? I love those guys. I think their show is great. I watch it regularly. We've got Hunter's Crack Dealer is here. Says, Rob, we just need to discuss the effects of crack addiction. Stop talking about your metrics. Let's talk about crack addiction. Yeah, which is true. Yeah, Hunter could use the 12-step book, no question about that. All right, we had some super chats coming in. Let's see what we've got here. Alex Bogey says, let's start back up. Beth Coddington in the house with a very generous super chat as always says, good evening, Robert and Grulerites. Just because I love you. Happy anniversary, dear. Very nice of you. Very, very nice, Beth. Thank you for that. Always so generous. Yeah, Patrick's here says, pro tip, you won't get any help from the algos. You need to cross-pollinate with other YouTubers in your natural network. Morrow, Barnes, Nate the Lawyer, and hit the cultural channels. Yeah, there's a lot of cultural stuff that we really don't talk about, and those videos seem to do very, very well. But again, I don't want to change content to sort of just, puff up numbers. Like, I got to be true to myself, true to our mission here. And so that's sort of what I was talking about the collective enlightenment. So it's a good topic, but I can stop being so narrowly focused. There's no question about that, right? We don't need to hit vaccines and mandates every day. We can save a lot of that stuff. And a lot of the stuff is actually, we're only sort of half talking about it many times on YouTube anyways. So maybe that should be pulled off over to locals. We have another one from Alex Bogey says, you kept me sane during the election challenge. Used to follow Legal Eagle and his Trump derangement turned me off. Your shows overlap with Tim Pool. You will likely grow once SCOTUS looks at the Roe versus Wade challenge in December. Yeah, that's true. When there's a lot more, interesting things that are legal to talk about, we'll do that. It's been a little bit, quiet on that front. Talk more about the Arizona audit Trump just did in Georgia. That was from Alex Bogey. And those are all like in that gray area, Alex. YouTube has a very specific misinformation policy. Jennifer is here, says, Rob, you always stay true to yourself, your content, and your viewers. You're a phenomenal human. Keep doing what you're doing. That's from Jennifer. That's very nice, Jennifer. I don't know about any of that, but I appreciate the very nice compliment and the support. We have Starling Lee says, blame Mercada. Mama Susan saw you there. She has you in the corner with him. Read Illusions by Richard Bach. Is he going through the same problems over there? It's ridiculous. I need to connect with him again. We're going to do he came by and actually, I think we're going to connect again. Pro Player says, don't forget, some people may unsubscribe for fear of being associated with your freedom-loving channel. That's a scary thought, but that's also a possibility. And oh my gosh, Sabo Abbas with a massive super chat. Oh my goodness, Sabo. That's too much, my friend. Thank you. It says, Rob, keep doing what you're doing. In some ways, you provide the same information as Rush. You have a lawyer's perspective, and so did Rush. Love the show. Don't overanalyze. Trust your instincts. Rush was self-made and did not depend on the internet for his success. Yeah, that's true, Sabo. And the fact that you would even, think about us in the same format to some degree is also amazing. That's very, very, very nice of you. That's a humbling comment. It makes me sort of emotional even thinking about that. But that's very generous of you. Thank you. I'm so grateful that you're here. Also, we've got Andrew Ness that says, stop being so modest. I don't even know what to say to that other than, I'll try. I guess I'll try. No, I really am sort of being vulnerable, even bringing this up. A big part of me said, don't even talk about any of this stuff. Just kind of bury it all away and just, subscribers go up, go down, who cares? But I feel like we're building something. We're building a community, and I want to share with you what I'm thinking and what's happening, and make sure that you're apprised of this. And if the show's terrible and everybody hates it, well, there are things that you can do to modify it, make some tweaks that will still keep it true to the original form. But I'm always thinking about improving and connecting and getting feedback, and we haven't done that really in a year. So I'm tremendously grateful for all the comments that have come in. Some more over on Local from Tweak says, I just want to add that you're far from the only creator who's struggling with this. Around Christmas, New Year last tube, YouTube imposed a bunch of new rules, resulted in a large number of creators getting booted off the platform, as well as creators getting their viewer stats manipulated. A few examples I could find in 30 seconds. Seems I can't share photos in the stream. Sorry, I can't post. I'll try to post them in the comment stream if you can see them there. That's from Tweak saying that this is kind of an ongoing thing around the YouTube world. We have Tremendous here says, Rob, I think it's great. You're always looking to improve both the show and yourself as a person. I think the advice on relaxing the vaccine stuff a little bit might be wise, but if you're not interested in a specific case, it's probably better to not force yourself to talk about it. If you're interested in the case, it will show in your commentary. Keep up the interaction from us. It's what makes the show special. That's from Tremendous. Yeah, and another question I would have is, are the comments also appreciated for the people who don't join in live? Do they like that? Do they like hearing the Q&A that comes up during the live show? It'd be very interesting. We have another one from Lord Nelson says, with my professional experience, I can tell when listening to clips of congressional testimony, your trial experience is so much better than any of those congressmen. Your content on this show is so valuable. We have a lot of morons in Congress. I don't think that says anything about me to any degree. It's just that they're just so dumb. I don't think that shows that I'm good. It's just that they're dumb. Sweet Potato says, my experience trying to get legal help from them for the mandates wasn't great. That's why. I like what they stand for, though. You're way better and don't need them. Give us new collabs. Sorry to offend. She's talking about Viva and Barnes. Hopefully they're not listening right now. Christiana says, okay, a private comment. I'll read that later. We have another one from Greg Murat says, would you do 101 basic clips on criminal justice? Maybe on another channel. Yeah, so I wrote a book called Beginning to Winning, and I have slides for the whole book that somebody helped me create. And so I'm going to do a whole series on that. Beginning to Winning. It's like Criminal Law 101, the 9 parts of a criminal case that you should think about that's applicable to anybody anywhere in the country. And so I am going to make a series of that. It's going to be over on our R&R Law Group channel, though. All of the heavy legal content will go over there. We have another one from Peely Wally says, at the end of the day, you've got to go with what you believe in and where the heart goes. Don't venture into new pastures if your heart isn't into it. Sometimes riding out a slow time will bring you out stronger in the future. You're still the channel I watch most on YouTube anyways. And it's a good reminder. So there is another book. What's the name of it? I can't remember it. But it talks about that you have to continually sort of feed your curiosity. You got to feed it. And sometimes you get sort of into this rhythm, like maybe here are the vaccines and COVID, that you just you forget about the other things that you're also curious about, And so I am naturally a very curious person. I like to dig. I like to go down rabbit holes, and there's a lot of other things to talk about. And so maybe that will be the most sort of obvious change here, is that, I sort of get back in touch with some of those things that are curious and take more cues from you, the audience. This is what we want to talk about. Oh, I am curious and interested about that. So we just go down that direction. But those were from locals. We had one other super chat before we get out of here for the day from John Allen. Says, I watch you on every stream. You have the best personality. You truly are the best streamer out there. You bring great content and deep analysis. Truly a great. That's from John Allen. That's super nice, John. Thank you for that and for your support. I've got a lot of comments that people sent over in private, and so I'm going to be able to read through those this weekend. I appreciate everybody sharing those, but that is it for me for the day. I know this segment was a little bit, behind scenes. It was behind the nuts and it was what's going on behind the curtain show, but I really appreciate it. I mean, I really take all of these comments to heart. They are going to be something I think about all weekend, and if you notice some pivots and some changes with the show, that's why, right? I'm really trying to improve. I'm trying to be more effective. I'm trying to help people understand what the world is going on, what's happening in the world, or at least look at it from a little bit of a different perspective and have some fun while we're doing it. Tremendous says, about your comment, if other people like the comments as a part of the show, isn't that part of the point of the Clips channel? You can easily watch the commentary and then stop watching it if you don't care about the questions you're getting from the audience. It's a great point, Tremendous. Yeah, everybody can just go on over there, and you're exactly right. They can watch the first part of the clip and then bail out to the next video when the commentary comes up, and it's great over at the Clips channel. And so that, my friends, is it from us for the questions. Thank you again so much for indulging me on that and sharing some feedback with me. I want to thank all of the amazing new supporters we got over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. Ton of people have signed up recently. I'm so grateful. Maxim27 signed up. Thank you for the year. Unbridled Form joined us. We have Avia Tricks is in the house. We've got Burnt to a Crisp 662 also joined for the year along with Avia Tricks. We have Let's Be Fair signed up. R. Taylor's in the house. G. Mutai is in the house, or J.E. Muay Thai is in the house. Also for the year, Lu La G is in the house for the year. Maxim92 signed up. Angel Baby, Hellraiser, Jumpin' Jeff, Desert Daisy all signed up as well. Several for the year. Welcome Desert, Jumpin', Hellraiser, and Maxim for the year. We had yesterday, Skip Money was in the house. My mother signed up for the year. Rob's mom is in the house now on Locals, and that's actually my mom. Buzz Dog is in the house for the year. W Trash signed up. Phil in Flyover Country, shout out. Miles Away, Kendra, Brenneman, Anon, Earthboy, and No One You Know, along with many others who signed up the week before that, including Geomancy Gabe. Subscribe on YouTube. Join now for $5 a month or $50 for the year if you want to be a part of the community. And please join us tomorrow, Saturday, October 2nd, from 7 to 8 p.m. over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. There's a registration form that is ready and available if you want to be a part of it. It's going to be an hour and a half. Cameras on if you want, cameras off if you want. It's super casual. Just raise your hand, ask some questions, and we have a discussion, because that's what we're doing. We're building a community. And that, my friends, is it for me for the day. I want to thank you so much for being here, being part of the week with us. I know that September was a little bit of a kind of a rocky month for new content, but feeling good, and October is here and new. And so we're going to get right back into it, coming back on Monday. And I hope you join us 4 p.m. Arizona time, 5 p.m. Mountain, 6 p.m. Central, 7 p.m. on the East Coast. And for that one Florida man, everybody else have a tremendous evening, a very nice long weekend. Unplug from politics a little bit, because we got to get rested and ready to go back on Monday. I look forward to seeing you there. Have a tremendous weekend, my friends. Until the next one. Bye-bye.